meeting to order. Can we please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Am I on? Okay. All right. Can I get a motion to consider and act upon the minutes of January 30th, 2023?
So moved.
You're on mute, I think, Tom.
Yeah, I'll second it, but I'm going to abstain from voting on it.
Yep, got it. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You're going to abstain. Tom? You're going to abstain.
I'm abstaining, yes.
Okay. All
I thought
righty.
that's what you said.
Okay. All righty then. We're moving right along. Okay, can I get a motion?
I've been up since 4 a.m.
God bless you.
I'll just also like to say
Yeah.
thank you to Prue, who I think captured the conversation succinctly and well, so thank you.
Nancy, would you leave your microphone in a little closer?
What I was saying, this is Selectwoman Lefkowitz, is that I wanted to thank Prue for just being succinct but precise on the minutes taken last time, so thank you.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve the appointment of Janine Pekowski, who would be filling the vacancy left by Sarah Key, who was elected to be state representative?
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. So thank you for joining us, Janine. I know you have a busy schedule, and we had some nice conversations over the past week, and it's good to see you. And I usually
Good to see you. Wow.
I usually give the person being appointed the opportunity to say a few words if you'd like.
I did write a few words, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Sure, go right ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is an honor to be here and to have the opportunity to be considered for the alternate TPV Commission appointment. And just having this opportunity to serve Fairfield, which is a community which has enriched my family's life beyond measure, it's truly a humbling experience. So thank you. I find myself here this evening after having had the privilege of working with neighbors over the past year to make positive changes to Villa Avenue. And because of that firsthand experience I had with dedicated residents, town representatives in the police force, it was an experience that led me to understand my desire to work for Fairfield or to take on a more formal role and to serve the residents of Fairfield in a more formal way. So I see this opportunity to join the TPV Commission as a way to serve the residents in a significant way. I believe our town's beauty and development, they rely on the TPV Commission members asking the right questions, seeking pertinent information, and acting in the best interest of residents. And I do feel strongly that my experiences as a researcher, an educator, and a mother, and most importantly, a dedicated Fairfield resident, will allow me to contribute in a meaningful way. And so thank you again. I appreciate your support, and I apologize that I'm not there in person. I most definitely will be moving forward. I just have a class right after this, so I am actually on campus, and I was not able to make it in time, so I apologize. But thank you again.
Thank you, Janine. I'll open it up to the board.
Just to say thank you. Appreciate all the reasons that you are interested in serving, and I wish you well, and thanks for stepping up.
Thank you.
So I wanted to also note that in looking at your background, you actually taught at the same school that my mother taught at for about 20 years. So,
Which school is that?
Wakely School in Wolcott, Connecticut. I grew up.
My first school, my first teaching position, and
Yeah.
it is a treasured school. That's wonderful to know. I'm hear more about that when I meet you in person.
Yeah, and my father was actually chairman of the building committee there for the big renovation that was done there. So, which might have been a conflict of interest, I have no idea, but he was. So, more importantly, though,
I never thought.
Look, TP&Z is a very important commission in this town. It's the economic engine. One of the resources one of our most sacred resources in town is the ability to use our land appropriately, and it defines the character of the town. So it's a big responsibility even going on as an alternate. I thank you for serving in that capacity, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much.
And Janine and I had some nice conversations because I looked at her resume and I was like, well, why do you want to do this? And so, obviously I had some good interactions with Janine over the past year. She was very instrumental in doing some safety improvements and actually helped spur some changes in the way we look at things. Sometimes you need to have a fresh look at the way you do things. And so she was very helpful in that regard. And I did share the same sentiments, Tom, about how the planning and zoning is actually a very important board, and I think you're going to be a good addition to it. And I, again, always say to everybody that gets appointed, please feel free to reach out to me if you ever have any questions. If there's anything or information that you need, we're always try to be helpful in supplying that. And I wish you luck.
I appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Thank you, everyone.
All right, if there's no further comment from the board, is there any comment from the public? Seeing none. Back to the board. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Tom? Motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you, Janine.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
All right, you too. Take care. Okay, our next item on the agenda is appointment that we postponed to this meeting from our last meeting. So can I get a motion to appoint Sally Conley, a reappointment of Sally Conley to the Board of Health? Do I have a second? Tom?
He raised his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see. Okay, I'm going to open it up. Actually, Ms. Conley was at our last meeting and shared a lot of good information about her background, her experience, and her time on the Board of Health. And so I'm just going to open it up to the board if there's any discussion, additional discussion or questions for Ms. Conley.
You guys hear me?
Yeah, now.
I can.
Okay. Yeah, no, I don't have any questions. It just seemed like you were having problems and I was not on mute.
Okay.
I guess I would just follow up and say that my position is, I have no desire to silence you, Sally. I don't even think that would be possible, which I appreciate and respect. And my decision not to support you is not tantamount to silencing you. I would never even want to suggest that that's true. And I think it's important to reiterate that point. So I don't have anything further right now.
Okay.
Nancy, can I ask the reason then, if you don't mind, and you don't have to answer, but if it's not that, what's the reason? Just because I didn't have the benefit, and my apologies of being at the last meeting for the fulsome discussion on this.
Well, we did have a long discussion, and I'm certainly happy to repeat some of that here. But I feel that the positions that, Sally, that you've shared publicly have been throughout your tenure were counter to many of the positions espoused publicly by the Board of Health and even by this administration, and some views that I think were trying to keep the emotion out of it, because I think it did get a little bit emotional last week, but some of them were subject to my own concern and concerns of the accepted medical community. And again, I think you provide important perspective, but I don't necessarily think it's perspective that is appropriate to be serving on the board. But last week, I made the decision to table this vote because I think it got emotional in a way that I didn't think was appropriate. So, and I didn't want it to turn into something political. So I accepted that we could table it and understanding that I was likely going to be in a minority position. And last week, I could have been in a position where my point of view would have been considered and it would have gone in that way. But as I said, I didn't want to get involved in a sort of political back and forth, and I wasn't here, so to have that discussion in person.
What is accepted medical advice?
I'm sorry, who's that speaking?
My name is Jim Kutzo. I'm the father of Evan Kutzo.
Hi, Jim. So the way this works is the board is now discussing the item, and then I will open it up for public comment, and then.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay, it's okay.
I'm happy to address that. And hi, Jim, and I'll just publicly say how sorry I am for your loss. And obviously, words fall incredibly short. And my not approving or appointing or wanting to reappoint Sally for this board, I think is a separate discussion. I can refer to one of the comments that was made in October of 2020 when you, Sally, talked about vulnerable people, clearing house. It came at a particularly sensitive time when my lifelong best friend's father died in a nursing home. So that was against accepted, Jim, to your question, that was against accepted medical, what the board, both the Board of Health, the director of the health department and the administration was putting out there. And I think also the choice to wear a mask or not mask is not, at the time, again, at a height of COVID, which was being touted again by the accepted medical community, by the Board of Health, by this administration, when you post it and then use the Board of Health. It is your right to post and not wear a mask and all of that, and I don't take that away from you. But when you're representing the Board of Health, I think it takes on a different responsibility. So I don't know if that answers your question, Jim, but.
I do want to.
All I have to say is a lot of things that were accepted are garbage, to be quite honest with you now.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about
Yeah, I'm just going to call.
I'm going to.
about the mental health of kids,
All right, so
getting them back to school, that wasn't accepted. But now we now know.
Oh, do not touch it.
We have to keep people.
No.
I'm going to call a point of
So
order.
just one moment. Let me take control back of this meeting. So I tried to get back on track. You wanted to respond to that, which I would have allowed that public comment to happen when the time was appropriate. So I'm going to bring control back to the meeting. Is there anybody on the board who would like to make any comments before I open it up to Ms. Conley and then to the public?
And I do have one more.
Thomas wants
Oh,
to.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Hey, Nancy, thanks for taking the time to explain that. That was helpful for me. Look, my position on this is that I think these boards are made up or intended to be made up of diversity of opinion. I think that diversity of opinion is very important when discussing controversial topics. And, there's a lot of times, maybe even some of the things that Sally has said I don't agree with, even though she's a Republican and I'm a Republican and I've known her for a long period of time. There's things certainly that other people have said that I disagree with. But that, I think, is the strength of our government and the strength of our town bodies and our commissions is that diversity of points of view. And as it comes to the medical community, I don't think that back in the day when we were living through that, everybody was always on the same page. I think it was unprecedented times. And I think as anybody could point out, there were things that we thought were generally accepted, which turned out to be wrong. There were things that we did which generally turned out to be incorrect. There was things that we did that actually helped save lives and do things, but it was unprecedented. And to say that a diversity of views on that was dangerous or unwarranted, I just don't think so. We weren't dealing with something that was well known at that point in time. And I think we certainly didn't fully appreciate, the mental health issues, the socialization issues, and all the rest that went with COVID. And quite frankly, I don't think we fully appreciate that now, and probably won't for many years to come. I look at my own kids that were in college and 8th grade and into high school at that time, and what the long-term impact on their learning was. I can certainly tell you math scores have been affected in that result. But I like the diversity of viewpoint. I like people that are going to challenge conventional thinking. I like a robust debate and discussion. I think that's the strength of our government, and I'd hate to do anything that silences it, even if I disagree with it, just because I think we come to better decisions that way. And I certainly think with all that's going on in the medical community, that shouldn't remain untouched for that community as well. So I'm willing to support Sally for this. I think she's got a nice background. She's got I know her to be a person of integrity, and certainly she's going to speak her mind, and I'm all for that, as I am with others who do the same thing. And that's just the way I come down on it. So thank you for the time to speak to it, to my colleagues on the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you, Tom. Nancy?
So I actually don't agree or don't disagree with anything you just said. But I do think that when you're representing a commission, you're representing the majority when you're putting yourself out there as a representative of that body. And when it's a minority position, I think it's important to also share that. I agree. The ramifications are deep, and we didn't know any of that. But I also don't think it's a false equivalency to suggest that one person's place on a board who is really going against what that majority of the board is saying, and then you're representing that board is the same thing or fair. So I'm really not here to try to win a debate. I have a point of view. But I do agree with everything you said. I don't think anyone should be silent. I think the diversity of opinion is important. I think the debate is good. I think we are still learning and will feel the ramifications long into, for many years to come. But again, I do think it's a false equivalency to suggest that all of those things are somehow related to someone on the board misrepresenting the majority opinion of that board. So again, I don't have anything further. I'm really not wanting to get into a debate about this, especially when it is so emotional. We have the presence of Mr. Kuzco here, who's experienced something unimaginable, but I think it is separate and apart from whether or not we choose to reappoint Sally to this board. And as I said, I certainly value the difference of opinion, and I certainly value you speaking your mind, and I just don't know that this is, for me, the right vehicle for it. So. And I recognize that I am in a minority position here, and this is the way this works, so.
So before I open it up, I would just like to say, I think that, actually, I just want to address the fact that as a member of the minority, you did have an opportunity to stop this appointment last week. You were in a position to do that. I think, as far as being a representative of a board, back in the day when I first got involved in politics, I was on the RTM. I had members that I was partnering with on the Board of Ed who supported 2 high schools who were in the minority position at the time at the Board of Ed, and the only reason it was stopping was because we were stopping it at the RTM level. But I remember the people who were supporting one high school saying that those people should be in line with the majority of the board because that's the way the board voted. And I kind of look at it like that. Like, those 4 members who wanted 2 high schools spoke openly against the board's ultimate decision to keep pushing forward with 1 high school proposal. And they passionately spoke out against it, even though that was the position of the majority. So, listen, I know that COVID was an emotional issue. I just think that I agree with Selectman Flynn that, while we may not always agree with, and I know I do not agree with every single person I appoint to a board or commission. I can tell you that. I don't even agree with my husband all the time. So, and I married him. So, and stayed married now for almost 38 years this month. So I think divergent opinions are important for our democracy, and even when I disagree with someone, I would never restrict the right to speak and have that opinion. So that's why I originally, and I'll just comment what I said last week, Sally has a lot of good experience in the healthcare field. I think it's important. She has different experiences than some of the other members on the Board of Health. And I know sometimes emotions got a little high during COVID. I dealt with a lot of it. Believe you me, I heard it all. But I think that Sally still will be a valuable member to the Board of Health. So I am going to open it up now because we do have a really, I'm going to bring it back to the board after we do the public, but we do have a very full agenda. We have department heads here. We have pickleballers. And they're very passionate. And so I'm going to open it up. Yes, Mrs. Conley, please, Mrs. Conley.
Anyone who knows me knows it's kind of hard to keep quiet when I'm passionate about something, and that's kind of the way I am. I appreciate the support. I did not expect last week's meeting to go as it did, and I do have a few thoughts on that, but I am also respecting the fact that there's a lot on the agenda and that this is usurping some of the time. I'm going to try not to reiterate too much, but what I'm going to do right now is read just a quote. This is an excerpt from Emily Oster, who is a Brown University economist. I'm using that because, yes, it's annoying when I say I went to Brown, but I did. But I use that sometimes because I do feel like it does give some clout, and also it's known as a more liberal, certainly Democrat establishment. And she is actually a professor there, an economist who writes a lot. So this is from an article about 3 months ago in The Atlantic, Let's Declare a Pandemic Amnesty. And what she said, so she's teaching this class on the pandemic, is we've spent several lectures reliving the first year of the pandemic, discussing the many important choices we had to make under conditions of tremendous uncertainty. Some choices turned out better than others. To take an example close to my own work, that's her, of course, there is an emerging, if not universal, consensus that schools in the U.S. were closed for too long. The health risks of in-school spread were relatively low, whereas the cost to students' well-being and educational progress were high. The latest figures on learning loss are alarming. Reasonable people who cared about children and teachers, advocated both sides of the reopening debate. Emily Oster is someone that I looked to back in October of 2020, actually, because she had writings and data to support the fact that the virtual, the hybrid, and the in-person models had virtually no statistical difference. So again, we're looking at healthcare, we're looking at scientists, we're looking at data. And what often happens, as we know, is that changes aren't made in real time. And what needs to happen sometimes is for someone to advocate for those changes. I find that I am in that position oftentimes. Regarding what Nancy said, I'd like to point to that specifically. And I really honestly don't want to rehash that one meeting because I've apologized for how that came off. That was not my intention. It was a direct conversation, paraphrase, with a social worker that I had at one of the nursing homes where I asked what had happened to many of the patients. And yes, that phrase was used, whether you like it or not, but I refuse to be a scapegoat. I am not the person who killed the patients, okay? I spent 20 years working with patients. I'm a speech pathologist. I spent 15 years in nursing homes, and anyone who understands speech-language pathology I am often the absolute last person who has to do the evaluation on whether a person can swallow liquid or food, okay? And I'm the one who writes out that protocol. I'm the one who has to talk to the family members and let them know how their family member is doing, and basically try to find the best quality of life for that patient. I've watched numerous patients die. I've been in the rooms with them during chain strokes. So for someone to actually insinuate, it is not my fault that COVID took the vulnerable and the weak during that time. I took no pleasure in that, and I continued to see my patients during that. As far as your question about misinformation, in my opinion, there was actually absolutely no point where I absolutely advocated anything that was on the Board of Health's thoughts at the time. And there are things that I did advocate for, like getting back into school, like unmasking kids. Yes, but that was at a different time, and there was different information, just like Emily Oster, the economist, who had the data to support it back in 2020. Because we did take a long time, we already just discussed the learning loss. I'm wrapping up. We also discussed at our last Board of Health meeting, Jill, who is the nurse supervisor for all the schools, pointed to, I believe it was a triple increase in visits to the nurses because of mental health deficits. We already know that the suicide rate has increased, addiction. You can go through all the levels, I mean, all of the different areas. And so that is what I want to point out. I feel that, and then the last three things I wanted to say is that, first of all, whether I'm on a board or not, yes, I am a person of influence, I will say that, and I did write a letter when our musicians, I actually worked very closely with Carol Guernsey, who is a Board of Ed member, who's actually a Democrat Board of Ed member, because we worked together to advocate for our students to go back into having concerts. And the day after writing that letter to the superintendent, they started to plan for concerts again, because that was following exact verbatim state level guidance. Same thing, speech language pathology services. I noticed that speech students were receiving speech services masked, and actually if you looked at the state level writings on that, it was very clear that those speech pathologists could be unmasked with those kids in order to provide the care that they needed. So I had many people reaching out to me asking for advocacy because their kids with autism, with speech language delays, were not getting the services because we were too slow to make the changes based on months of what had been written in the reopening of schools document at the state level. I picked through it with a fine-tooth comb, and I cited those verbatim to make those changes. So that is how I'm going to leave it. Yes, I'm a passionate person. I appreciate the appointment, but I 100% stand by every single thing that I advocated for to get our students back to school, to get kids who needed speech services, because I was seeing things from the inside as a mother of 4 children between elementary, middle, and high school, seeing kids who were struggling with mental health, and seeing patients in their homes and all of the insecurities that they were dealing with related to the pandemic. So that's my 2 cents. I came here even though I didn't really want to have the conflict again, because I don't exactly love it, but I feel like I need to be able to stand up for myself and stand up for my constituents. There are always going to be divergent opinions. I would never, Nancy, tell you, how to act on a board that has to do with film. I said that last week, like anything that's your area of expertise. This is my area of expertise. I've devoted 20 years to it. I have the credentials. I worked my way through undergrad and graduate on any NIH-funded grants as a research assistant. I got the 2018 Sacred Heart University Community Partnership Award for basically teaching 7 different speech pathologists how to become speech pathologists. That was alongside the CEO of St. Vincent's, by the way, and a teacher at CES. So honestly, to have my professional experience, challenge and opinions, I don't love it, but that is how I'm going to leave it. And I would look forward to working on the Board of Health again, because we all have a great working relationship. And that is what I'm going to say. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Sally. Is there any other member of the public, either in the room or online, who would like to comment on this item?
Yeah, this is Mr. Kutso again. And
Sure, go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Been said, we need divergent opinions, and we just can't go along as sheep when we're, if this ever comes up again. And again, we have to look at the big picture when these things do come up. And thank you all for your time, and I know it's not easy. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and I apologize for having to interrupt you earlier. I just trying to keep order in the meeting.
I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
It's okay. And I want to also publicly share my sincere sympathy for the loss of your son.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this appointment? Bring you back to the board. Is there any additional comments of the board?
There is, if I may. I have to push back and just say that my not voting for this reappointment is not challenging the professional experience of, it's not challenging the candidate's professional experience. In fact, I have great respect for it. I do. It's not, Mr. Flynn, you and the first selectwoman are both digging into the fact that, divergent opinions are important. I think that too. I'm not suggesting otherwise. And I want to reiterate that. That being said, I think when you are representing a board, it's important when you speak publicly to identify that as such. And what I have seen over the last few years is a representation of the majority opinion of the Board of Health. It's not about challenging your professional experience, and I think it's manipulative to say that, so I'm pushing back on that because I do have respect for that opinion, or for that experience. And I do think the divergent opinions are good. So we'll leave it at that. I don't have anything else to say.
All right. If there's no further comment from the board, and I am going to ask for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Tom? You're on mute again. All opposed?
Aye. Or
I said it, aye.
opposed.
All right, motion carries 2-1. Thank you. Okay. Our next item, may I have a motion to hear and consider and adopt a bond resolution entitled a resolution appropriating $7,687,622 for the costs of certain non-reoccurring capital projects and authorizing the issuance of bonds to finance such appropriation.
So moved.
Seconded.
Very good. All right, so we have in the room, we have a lot of people. So we have the fire chiefs, we have our Park and Recreation Director, we have Angeles Papageorge from the district, school district, we have our bond counsel, Mr. Sastrom, DPW interim director, Mr. Marsilio is on. We have our assistant director, Mr. Cattell. You did get a list, came in with your backup of the items. These are items that have been discussed for pretty much the past year, and items that the capital working group discussed at length and then were presented last week at the capital workshop at the Board of Finance. So I do hope you're familiar with them. And there's a lot of good information in the backup. So I'm going to open it up to the board to ask any question on any item on the non-reoccurring list.
Does it make sense to have a sentence, sorry. Can I?
Sure, go ahead.
Does it make sense just to have, for those who are in the room, a sentence or two, just kind of, I am familiar, I don't really have questions, but does it make sense to just hear?
To go through the items?
Yeah.
Just,
Can we go through the items one by one, please?
Yeah, where's that? Where did we, is it here?
it's
No.
on page 5, I think.
That's the list of items.
Okay. I had my other sheet I've been working off through the last year upstairs. This is the backup that was provided. So, well, in engineering, we have guardrail repairs, Phase 2. Also, in engineering, we have the Green Farms Bridge construction. design of Stratfield Road area, design of the post road, jug handle. These are all engineering. Round Hill Road, Reef Road sidewalks, and in engineering, Ann Harbor is the lower wharf and fishing pier. For fire, we have the pumper for $980. Park and Rec has the driving range upgrades. We have the post-tension tennis courts at Fairfield Woods. And then we have the Tunxus Hill pickleball courts. And so those are the town side on the non-reoccurring. And I did mention this during the capital workshop. It was mentioned during the capital working group where it was discussed about moving some of the items off our non-reoccurring list to use some of the freed up ARPA funds when the fiber optic project that we originally voted on ended up costing way more than we had thought it was going to be costing and what we had appropriated for. So we have had the Board of Finance slide some of that money toward the Stratfield Four Corners project. I mentioned this at the capital workshop last week. We were taking a look through that non-reoccurring list after the capital working group talked about it quite a bit, and we thought we should pull some of the items off the non-reoccurring because we do have that ARPA money. And so we will be discussing that later on in the agenda. So those are the town projects, and then Mr. Papa George is here if you have any questions. They have 3 vestibule projects and boiler burner replacement, Knapp's Highway tennis and basketball courts. Is that helpful? Sure, Tom, go right ahead.
Yeah, can we have Mr. Hurley step us through each of the projects that engineering is proposing briefly so that we can hear each one of those? I do have the backup in front of me, but I'd like to hear those. I'd also like to know, specifically comment on, though I know it's in the 14 points, the reliability of the cost estimates, as well as the service years of these projects.
There you go, Mr.
Okay.
Hurley.
All right.
So, yes, please try to briefly, obviously, these are complicated projects, but they are projects that have been discussed pretty much over the course of quite a while, I would say.
Sure. The first one, the townwide guide rail.
No, you don't have to hold it.
Oh, I don't have to hold that.
Turn it on.
That'll make me a little bit more
Turn
comfortable.
it on, turn it on.
There we go. Sorry. It's different than the Board of Ed one.
Yeah, those are really
Yeah.
lousy.
I tried.
So anyway, the town-wide guide rail improvements is a continuation. We do have some ARPA money that we are currently spending. And a matter of fact, we have 6 more locations this spring that will be installed. And this takes it one step further for next year. This is based on the roadway standards. It's also based on current bridge and culvert reports that we got from the state that state that we have aging or improper guide rails and that need replacement. We are looking at about 4,000 linear feet of guide rail. There are 65 bridges and culverts in the town. The request is for $200,000, which would cover about 1/3 of the higher priority locations, and then the ARPA would cover. So we'd get a majority of the ones needed to be done.
What would the ARPA cover, Bill?
The ARPA was also, if I recall, it was also $200,000, and it covered 6 bridges. It covered by Richard White Way. That one has been done already. It covered.
So is this saying that between this and the ARPA, you cover about 2/3 of the requirement, and then the next 2/3 would be next year, or the next third? Sorry.
Yeah, no, yeah. It'd be the ARPA is 1/3. This would be 1/3, and then maybe we have 1/3 that we would tackle a couple years later, depending on the latest reports. The request is based on Department of Transportation cost estimates and DAS state bid pricing. So we have them, and that's what we've been going by. So I think that's it for the guide rail, unless you want to go in further detail.
No, that's fine. Why don't you go to the
Okay.
unless anybody else on the board has questions. If not, you can go to the Green Farms Bridge.
Okay. On this one here, it's still in design phase. And so in the last conversation I had with the state, it appears that the construction will be pushed back a year. So I'm going to ask that this one be transferred to next year. If that's okay with everybody.
So this one comes off this list?
Yes. Jared, is that, I just want to double check the latest correspondence that we had.
So, Madam First Selectwoman?
Yes.
Can we just talk about what the implication of that is at some point? Well, if it changes?
Yeah, well, that's why bond counsel's here too,
Okay.
because this is a bonding item.
If we did keep it,
We just amend this, we take it off.
Correct.
And we adjust the amount of the bond.
I mean, it is possible it could be pushed to the very end of the fiscal year, but it just makes more sense to push it if that's better for the town. If not, we can leave it on, and I can go into further detail with it.
Sorry, I see bond counsel furrowing an eyebrow. I just want to know if
No, I think you're going to make a decision either to leave it in or take it out, one or the other. So I think.
I think we take it out right now with the way rates are and the like, and we leave it for another year.
Ultimately, Tom, just to let you know, this is the one we share with with Westport. And this is the one where the state, we were able to get a pilot grant program where the state paid 100% of the design. The feds will pay 80% of the construction. Westport will pay 10%, and then the town of Fairfield will pay 10%. Westport is the lead agency, so whenever the money is due, we'll have, obviously when the project goes out to bid, we'll have a better idea of the exact timing for this. So it really is up to the town on how they want to handle this one. And as I said, this was just in a conversation, just to show you how sometimes these are dynamic. In November, they said it was going to be built in 2024, and then the state says you should probably figure on 2025. So that's where it puts us in a little bit of a bind when the consultant and the state aren't on the same page.
And pulling it out, does that perhaps put us at risk for it not happening in terms of the amount we're on the hook for? Does Westport sort of determine or dictate our timing at all?
Well, the Westport will go by what the state recommends. The state likes to start the projects typically in the springtime, so they can try to get it all done in 1 year or one construction season. And if they have to go into the next spring or summer, they don't like to have the bridges, go two full years.
We're not missing out on an opportunity.
Oh, no,
Okay.
no, not at all. No, our thing would still be 10%, and that 10% will be based on the contract bids.
Is there some opportunity for us to be able to get this done, like you were saying earlier, at the end of the fiscal year?
It's slightly possible, and again, it would all be the state. They still have to go through the same process as we do.
But even if we put it on on the
permits.
list, or we kept it on, it's not as if the money's going to go away. We still have the ability to bond for it.
If you left it on the list, of course, you don't have to bond for it right away.
If you leave it on the list, you don't have to bond for it right away. You, with the advice of Jared, could decide to hold the bonding for it till next year. You just would have the authorization in place. So I think you could do either. What I'm hearing here is that if you authorize this again next year, that might be enough time to do it because you won't need the money till next year.
That's correct, but I also want to mention that the Wakeman Lane Bridge, which is another one that we're sharing with Westport, has already been pushed back. So that was why we were in a little bit of a quagmire of what year to put this one in.
Why, if you don't think?
Oh, it's strictly from a finance standpoint. From engineering, when the bridge is ready to go out to bid, we get to review it with the state and the Westport, and then they put it out to bid. It's just I want to make sure we have the money, whether I go for a special 14 points sometime later this year or early next year, or whether we go do it now. I just wasn't sure
I think I just reiterate, I think it sounds like in the case of this project, you know you're going to do it.
Right.
It's not a project that's not going to be done. It's a question of timing. So if the board decided to amend the resolution, you could do that today. It sounds like you could take it up again next year. However, if you wanted to leave it in, okay, you would have the authorization in place. You just wouldn't put this in your actual bond issue till next year, but you'd already have the authorization done.
And there's no, say, harm in just keeping it the way it is, so we don't have to go through changing of it.
There'd be no downside to having the authorization, understanding you're not going to do the bonding actually until next year.
And is it going to change the financial implication? Like, are we going to be paying for something we're not using this year, in simplest of terms?
No, you just don't go to bond. until you
No,
have your
and we don't need the bond issued in order to start the project. So if you know, let's say in June, May of this year, that we decide that we can go forward with this, even if we don't have the bond issued, we can still move forward with it because we have the authorization.
So
Depends on that you bond the wrong amount.
So if that's the case, I mean, I could quickly go through some highlights on this, and we'll keep it on if that's what you want to do.
Time out. You could also bond the wrong amount.
Well, I guess that's what
Or
I'm
not
asking with my
bonded,
question.
But authorize the wrong amount. Because the odds of this being the exact same cost point in 2025 versus 2024 is probably not likely.
And further to that, is there kind of a harm in coming back, whether it's a special meeting or putting on an agenda at a date uncertain
No.
when it comes up, right? There's no, maybe that's more a question.
That's
We can do that.
That's what I would think too.
So just to be clear, what are you guys are deciding? I'm just.
So my recommendation would be to leave it on because we, you know, it's not uncommon for the amount that we authorize to be different from the amount that it actually gets spent. So that would be my recommendation. If we need to change it in the future, we can do that.
I guess I would push back, and I appreciate your recommendation. I would just push back if there's no downside to putting this on an agenda down the line when we are closer to being certain. It seems we'd be closer to knowing the right amount. And if there's literally no downside to waiting or not waiting, why not then wait?
Tom, do you have an opinion on this?
I honestly think we should wait as well.
Okay, so could you just move forward
Sure.
briefly describing the other projects, and then we'll circle
Okay.
back at this.
Sure, no problem. And sorry for any confusion on that one, but as I said, that just came in that I mean, literally it was last Friday that I knew, so 2 to 3 days ago. On Stratfield Road, this is another one where the state of Connecticut has awarded the town from state bonding an urban grant based on road safety audit performed along Route 59. The state awarded this grant to the town as a way of encouraging alternate modes of transportation. The section covers from Stratfield Road, from Montauk Street to Collingwood, and includes potential safety improvements at Churchill and Route 59, and Churchill, Wilson Street, and Fairfield Woods intersection. The exact details of the grant have not yet been released. Based on similar grants, the town could be responsible for 100% design, with 100% of the construction costs being covered by the state bond or grant. The purpose of the project, sure.
Bill, what confused me here was, is there not already a streetscape project surrounding Stratfield Road and Fairfield Woods? So I was confused over how this kind of plays in with that.
Well, that's right in my next paragraph, Tom. It's reference is made to the Stratfield road safety audit, which was performed by the DOT, the Fairfield Bike and Pedestrian Committee, state representatives, town officials, a state senator, and members of the public. The problems listed were issues and concerns, as well as recommendations and improvements. It's a continuation of the sidewalk network where we have the pending, which is scheduled to to go for construction this spring, Stratfield Four Corners project, and that also, I think, helped increase the town getting this grant. So this will continue that.
That it's not
That's right.
conflict with that. It's not going to say we have to do something different than what's already been designed and what's already moving forward. It's going to work in conjunction with that. Is that right? That's kind of what I wanted to make sure.
Yes, absolutely. This would be a continuation. As I said, this one obviously hasn't been in design, so the Four Corners one will be constructed first. The contract has already been awarded, and the contractor is set to start late March or early April, depending on the weather.
Okay.
The next one.
I'm good with this one.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Anybody else? No, good. All right. The next one is Post Road jug handle. Similar project to the one I just mentioned at Stratfield. This is pedestrian improvements. It's $1.75 million. The state awarded the town. And again, same thing. The exact details of this grant has not been released yet, but again, we're making the assumption similar to the other ones, the connectivity and the other state bond, the Four Corners, where the town was responsible for 100% design, with the 100% of the construction costs covered by the state, and to go from there. This one is basically from the Post Road Circle. On the edge of it, say east, that would be the Post Road jug handle, and it goes towards the where the towing business is at the corner of Post Road and Route 130. Again, same thing. It was based on a road safety audit that was performed in 2017 that we've been working on with the state. And you can think of this one as a continuation of the one that should be constructed later this fall, and that would be the Grassmere Post, where we have the pedestrian sidewalk improvements there. So this time we're going in the opposite direction. We're going west rather than south like the other one. So this is a continuation of that grant, and hopefully this also sets us up where we are constantly asking and meeting with the state officials, trying to get additional money and funding for maybe the Post Road Circle project, which is obviously a much larger project. You had mentioned about, sorry, Tom, just wanted to answer your other question about service life. Typically, concrete sidewalks have a service life of about 40 years, pending some tree roots or utility cuts. The asphalt ones usually are around 20, 25 years, if you want to know the service life.
This isn't just about sidewalks, though, right? This is also the kind of if the streets need to be realigned to make traffic safer and the like, correct? This isn't just putting in sidewalks, or
That's correct. We get a dual benefit of if we narrow down an intersection or tighten the radius, it slows the cars down, and also by doing that, it might, instead of making the pedestrian cross, say 50 feet across the roadway, maybe now they only have to cross 35 feet.
Right. Okay.
And then the last one of mine is the fishing, the Lower Wharf fishing pier. The Harbor Commission has submitted a preliminary design and permitting to the Connecticut Deep for the Lower Wharf improvements and the replacement of the fishing pier. For those who don't know, that the fishing pier, this nor'easter from December damaged sections of the pier, including the access ramp. We had plans to replace this pier anyway, so that was a good thing. As I said, we've already started the permit process. The fishing pier is, if you know the Ye Olde Yacht Yard, it's the one further west of that. It's a popular spot enjoyed by many members of the public. It's only one of 3 public accesses in Southport. This also, not just the fishing pier, but we would also improve the retaining walls, which hold up the Lower Wharf land. And if left untreated over time, scour would occur in these sections. And then we'd lose some land. And when you lose land, the DEP doesn't let you put the land back.
Bill, Does this have to be coordinated with what's going on with the harbor and the dredging and stuff like that? How does that all work together, or is it totally separate?
On this one, yeah. On this one, it's totally separate. But your recollection wasn't too far off, because about 4 or 5 years ago, the Harbor Commission did vote to make some improvements to the pier and do the dredging at the same time. But in doing the dredging, they have been unable to find a disposal site in Long Island Sound. And so that project has kind of gone to the wayside.
Interesting. Is that causing a problem there right now?
Right, I would have to defer to the Harbor Management Commission on that one, but I could say that I do know that the Army Corps of Engineers and the town, I know Brenda had made an announcement, I think it was last month, that the federal channel will be dredged by the Army Corps of Engineers in 2024.
Yeah.
And then for the service life, it's probably 25 years or so for the decking, and 40 to 50 years for piles and the retaining wall with routine maintenance.
So for all of these, some of them we get grants, some of them we're working with the state. All of them have shelf lives of over 20 years.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Sure, you're welcome.
Thank you, Bill.
Sure.
Is there any additional questions on the items on the non-reoccurring list?
Yeah, I'd like to do the same thing with fire and the 3 park and rec ones, please, that Bill just did.
Good afternoon, Dennis McCarthy, Fire Chief. Part of the package includes $980,000 for the replacement of a fire pumper. As the board knows, the department maintains a replacement matrix. The purpose of the matrix is to ensure that we maintain a reliable fleet, and from a financial perspective, that we are not ordering or requesting funding for major pieces of equipment in back-to-back years. And that is the plan that we have been following for quite some time, certainly before my time began here in 2015. The vehicle cost or the vehicle construction time is important to note. The current vehicle under construction due to be delivered the end of this month, which was funded in 2021, it has taken a full 2 years or just short of that in order to build it. And that is the challenge we have with the manufacturers. All manufacturers of heavy equipment are experiencing similar long lead times. The current projected construction time for the vehicle that we're requesting to be purchased will be 24 months. So all of our projections for the fleet and repair and maintenance are now impacted by that very long lead time. It used to be that we would order a vehicle or get funding for a vehicle and have it delivered within 8 months, and that certainly has extended, and it affects our overall reliability of our equipment because their replacement time is much, much longer. The apparatus that we're replacing, or the matrix plan, is built on a 12-and-a-half-year cycle for frontline equipment. We rotate that through heavy use locations, certainly at Station 1, Station 2, which has the highest call load. And then as the equipment age, we reassign it to a slower station, either Station 3, 4, or 5, Stratfield, Southport, or Greenfield Hill in order to extend its service life. And then after 12 or 13 years, it goes into frontline reserve and serves in that capacity for another 12 years. So we get a full 25-year or so service life out of the vehicle as either frontline or frontline reserve. And then after that, we still maintain some equipment for several years following that because it can be secondary reserve. It can serve in capacity when we have to go to flooding conditions and things that would impact the reliability of the vehicle, exposing it to some hazardous conditions that we wouldn't want to put a brand new vehicle in. We're very happy with the manufacturer. We're getting our equipment constructed through a bid, national bid process, and Pierce Manufacturing has been the successful bidder. We just completed inspection of the vehicle that we're awaiting delivery on, and there were only minor items that were identified in that pre-delivery inspection out in Appleton, Wisconsin. And I'll pause there for questions.
Thank you, Chief. So a lot of what the chief said was in the backup on the 14 points. And so I just wanted to make sure everybody did read the backup. And I will open it up for additional questions from the board.
Chief, you also noted that there is safety issues with the current vehicle. Is that correct?
So,
is that a compliance?
So with each iteration of the national standards that govern fire apparatus and everything that we do, there are upgrades. There are upgrades to apparatus, just as there are with every motor vehicle. And we get greater protection for our employees in that the new equipment is built to a better design with more integral safety equipment, particularly airbags. How we carry equipment inside the apparatus is now governed by that new standard, so that in the event of a crash, the firefighters in the vehicle are not being struck by flying equipment. One of the more heavily regulated portions of the standard. And lastly, I would mention that the new standard will require us to carry turnout gear that is contaminated after exposure to products of combustion. You may have seen a lot of information on firefighter cancers. The new standard recommends that we carry that contaminated gear following exposure outside the cab. So that would be special compartments that are dedicated for that purpose, so that we're not suffering, our firefighters are not suffering continued exposure as they travel back to the fire station from an emergency scene. And that's not just structure fires. It's, you think of the contaminants from a car fire. If you've seen pictures of car fires and the amount of smoke that is generated from all of the plastics that are involved, that permeates the gear and requires proper cleaning, which we do in-house. But we want to make sure that firefighters are not wearing that gear or be exposed to that gear once it's contaminated.
Great. Thank you, Chief.
Questions from the board?
I'd just like to make a comment because, especially in light of what you just talked about, I think it's so important that you and the firefighters in town and everywhere get the protections that they need. You are putting yourselves in the line in a way that most people don't. Everyone else is busy running away and you're running towards. So I just want to say thank you. And of course, any safety additives that we can vote on today, I'm certainly, pleased to be able to do so.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And so I believe Anthony's got a few items. Again, these items have significant backup and they have been discussed at length. Obviously, we discussed them quite a bit during the Capitol. We discussed these quite a bit during the Capitol workshop, going back all the way, it'll be a year ago in March. And discussed them throughout, and these are items that have been on the list. And we've been talking about pickleball quite a bit, of course. All of us have gotten a lot of our pickleball emails from our passionate residents who enjoy the game. Okay, Anthony.
All right, thank you.
You know what? How about if I just, I'll just open it up to the board. Do you have any specific questions that aren't already included in the backup?
I want to hear from the team pickleball here. I don't have any questions.
You want to play pickleball with? I went and played with Betsy. It was fun. We did.
But go ahead with the.
Do you have any specific questions on the park and rec items?
Yeah, Anthony, can you step through them, please?
Sure. Anthony Calabrese, Director of Parks and Recreation. I'll start with the driving range at Smith Richardson. We're looking for $275,000 to basically replace what's up there. We're looking at all new netting, matting. We want to put in cement bays that'll be able to eventually house potentially a double decker, but we're going to keep it simple right now and stay with the single decker. We have 20 bays there. We'd like to replace the ball machine that's there with an automated ball machine so we wouldn't have to staff, keep the driving range open. Early hours, late hours, pretty much when anybody wants to go hit some balls, they can. We'd like to add a top tracer up there and eventually in phase 2, provide a functional short game area.
Thank you.
Anthony, what's the reliability of the cost estimates?
Well, in the 14, yeah, that's okay. In the 14 points, I pointed out that we did talk to 2 different golf course designers, and we used their estimates off of these. Both came in separately. Looked at the project that we walked them through, what we wanted to do, and their pricing was approximately in the same range. So we were asked to divide this up over 2 years worth of requests. So this year, like I said, we're going to try to do phase 1, and we're looking for $275,000.
What do you think the increase in revenue can be from doing this based on an extended season and better bays?
Well, currently we're making about $150,000 to $160,000 a year there. I can tell you Stanford has a double-decker heated year-round. They make close to $1 million. I'm not saying that we will generate $1 million in revenue. I think our location is off the beaten path. It's not next to the clubhouse, which obviously doesn't help us. But to say we could potentially double our revenue is not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, there could be better signage there, too, to be honest with you. That might help a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, and this is the 2-year proposal. That's not for double-decker. The double-decker's in the future. The 2-year proposal is to just clean this up, put roofs on it, and the like. Is that right?
That is correct.
Or does the 2-year proposal include double-deckers? Sorry.
The second year potentially will include the double-decker. That is still to be determined by the Golf Commission.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Second project that you should have in front of you is the Fairfield Woods tennis court replacement. I stand before you looking for approval of $522,000 for the replacement of the Fairfield Woods tennis courts. There are 4 courts there. They were rebuilt in 2004, and that they are essentially at the end of their useful life. We replaced them, or I shouldn't say we replaced, we resurfaced them in 2019. And essentially, that was the last time we were able to do that, and that was just more expensive than it should have been, unfortunately, with the amount of cracks that are there. We are looking to move these courts to post-tension concrete, which is what we've done, as you guys are all well aware, at our Tomlinson Middle School, at our Ludlow High School, and our Fairfield Ward High School. Post-tension concrete has a guaranteed lifespan of 20 years. We're guaranteed that they won't crack. If they do, they come out, replace them at their cost, so we don't have to worry about that. So in the long run, while these are a little more expensive up front, we do make the money over the long run. So,
So these have a 20-year useful life? Sorry.
They do. There haven't been any around in the Northeast for 20 years yet, so I can't point to a specific municipality that has them for 20 years, but in other parts of the country, they've had them easily 30, 40 years without cracks. So Nancy, sorry.
Yeah, so I may be, again, leading the witness here, but it seems like this project also, in the end, is really kind of a money-making asset for the town. Is that correct to say? Or at least to kind of, it's a beautiful asset.
It does bring, no, it does bring in some revenue through our programming with lessons and of the likes of that way. But the general public use these courts a lot, and so do our high schools. Fairfield Ward plays their some of their JV matches at Fairfield Woods. We do a lot of our youth tennis lessons there, and then obviously during the afternoon hours and on the weekends, a lot of general play for the residents, where we don't charge for.
So we see this as a result in a line item, but also in that sort of the thing you can't describe in
Exactly.
a line item. So would you say that that's the metric used for, or was there a metric used for why these projects now? I mean,
No, so, essentially, again, not to beat a dead horse in any respect, so I apologize. A lot of our capital planning over the years had gotten pushed to the wayside, whether it was Parks and Recreation, it was DPW, it was fire, it was police, and I don't mean to speak on behalf of those departments, but we weren't openly able to bring projects forward. And, with the new process that we've done, essentially, the town said, hey, what do you guys need? So here it is. We came forward and said, well, we need to replace this year. A few years down the road, we know we're going to have turf fields that need to be replaced. We have other tennis courts that need to be rebuilt. So I think the town's kind of taking a more proactive approach with maintenance issues rather than the deferring of that maintenance. So that's why these are here. Again, they were rebuilt in 2004. Bituminous tennis courts typically have a 10 to 12 year lifespan. So as you could see, we're well past that.
Hey, one question I had, you said these were resurfaced in 2019. Do you remember how we paid for that?
Out of our operating budget.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no other questions on Fairfield Woods, I will move on to Tungus Hill Pickleball. And that's why the room is filled.
You should just let them come up.
I'm sure they'll all come up and speak very kindly. So again, here to request $575,000 to replace the 4 Tungus Hill Pickleball courts that are there and to add the 2 additional pickleball courts that were pointed out and called for in our Fairfield Parks and Rec master plan that was recently presented to the town. These courts were built in 2014. Again, they're bituminous, so they should have had about a 10 to 12 year lifespan. We're at that basically, and now we're looking to replace them with post-tension concrete, so they will have a much longer lifespan and be used and enjoyed by our pickleball community. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Anthony, are we trying to increase capacity for pickleball as well? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know, quite frankly, I play myself. I'm not good, but I play. Is there a plan here to expand this? Because I know there's waiting lists and the like.
Yes.
Yes, and yes.
Yes. Yes, there's plans to expand. Obviously, we've got that in our master plan. We're looking to add additional courts wherever we can. So.
And that was considered for this location as well?
Yep.
And was it deemed not, tell me about that for this location.
We're adding two pickleball courts in addition to the 4 that are there.
For this project?
That's correct.
Okay. And you're saying 20 years again, so the useful life's not an issue here because of the new technology?
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah, I don't have any more questions on this.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony. And if you remember, we had added pickleball courts to Gould Manor where they weren't before when we did the renovation there, just due to the popularity. And so it offers a lot of opportunity for our community to have access. And these will go a long way, I think, as well. Do you have any other things, Tom, you wanted to discuss? Do you want to hear about the school projects?
Yeah, when we get to those, yes. I would like them to walk me through the school projects too.
Go ahead, Nancy.
On the town side, probably a question for you, Jared, if, you know, in 30 seconds or less, if that's possible. Is there kind of a thesis or a driver or a metric that ultimately was used by the capital planning team? And I did listen to the workshop to decide, you know, the question was asked, operating versus non-recurring capital, the operating budget versus non-recurring capital budget, like how those determinations were made?
So that's typically a policy that's been in place for some time. Anything that's over, what is it, 100?
If it's between 100,000 and $1 million, then it goes into the capital non-recurring. If it's less than that, then it would get funded through typically maybe asked for, requested in their operating budget and capital outlay.
And then if it's over, it goes into larger, major capital projects.
So then, and understanding that, can you explain then what the Parks and Rec decision from 2019 you had said? It just threw me.
Anthony Calabrese, Director of Parks and Recreation. To answer your question, we had said we resurfaced the Fairfield Woods Middle School tennis courts using our operating budget. Those projects are under $100,000.
I got it. It confused me.
Yeah, no
Thank
worries.
you.
So Tom, the only other items that we went through all our town, now we're, Angelus is here if you have any questions about the list. I mean, their vestibules, I know they were discussed quite a bit during the capital planning, but Angelus, if you want to kind of go through them.
Don't have to touch it. Good afternoon, everyone. Angels Pop Jersey, Executive Director of Operations, Fairfield Public Schools. So before you, you have the 3 vestibule projects that we had talked about slightly in the working groups. I can walk through or answer questions about those. Most of those are security issues, so we don't discuss them in public forum, but we're willing to have an offline conversation with anyone with the group that would like more information on those. The other 2 projects you see before you are funding for design-only phases of the projects. And as Mr. Flynn has brought up a couple times, you know, with today's date with the rates and what the prices changes are going on, and prices are being held for 30 days, 20 days, 1 week. So one thing we started last year with our roofing projects is we asked for the funding a year ahead of time, so it gives us the opportunity to get better numbers and lock in numbers. When we've done this in the past, we've always used conceptual design numbers to ask for funding, and then if need be, had to come back for additional funding. So the plan is moving forwards to use the first round to get the funding for the actual design work, so we're ready designed and ready to go out to bid so that we can lock in better numbers for when we come for full funding. The 2 you see there are the Knapp's Highway tennis courts at Ward High School, which would be a redesign of those existing tennis courts with the potential of adding a pickleball court that we've been discussing within the group. Those were, I can tell you, they had a resurface as well done to them in 2007. And from that, our best knowledge is that these are 60 years old and original to the school itself. So we feel they're way outdone their performance requirements for what we expected to get out of them. They are bituminous now, but we would be looking to go to a post-tension concrete tennis court. The second project.
Coordinating these bids with the town so that we're getting favorable pricing on those.
We would definitely work with Parks and Rec on that when we're ready to go out to bid for these.
Yeah, what I don't want to hear is that, you know, they go out to bid, they get theirs, and then you guys go out to bid. I think we need to, if we can, do them together and see if we can't get favorable pricing on those type things.
We would definitely work with Parks and Rec. I believe they're more ready to go with their projects, and we're a year away, so we'd have to look at timing, maybe not with the project currently, but with other projects in their waterfall.
Yeah, but maybe you bid them to the same people and then do your pricing even if they have not concurrent projects, but projects that are stacked up one year and then the next year.
we could absolutely do that with the contingency that funding is approved for them.
So these vestibule projects, you said they're largely safety projects. We've been doing this for quite some time now with the safety projects. Are we into kind of the second round of these, or is this still capping off the first round of getting to all the schools? Remind me.
We're still capping off the first round. These are buildings in your list that have not been touched yet, as of yet.
Are these the end? Are these the last few?
There's a few more after this, so I would not say yes, but we are getting to the finish line.
I'm actually surprised it's taken so long, because it's been like, what, 9-10 years we've been at this and coordinating it with the police department, right?
This, yes, and we have, don't misunderstand me, that we have made security upgrades to these buildings. This is a newer form that we're looking at with working with the state, that this is what the districts are going to for a safety entrance at this point, so that's why you're seeing these.
So it is kind of round two, Angelus. This isn't really round one. It's kind of, we've already done safety improvements into all these, and now we're going back and enhancing those yet again. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say that's fair.
And how, we've had issues in the past with a whole bunch of these things, as you alluded to before, with pricing estimates coming in way over. How comfortable are you with the pricing estimates on these items?
We were actually very comfortable with these prices because it's something we've just completed work with Holland Hill and Mill Hill. So we were able to use best price numbers and the contractors who were involved with those two sites to provide us with the best numbers possible. And we always carry a contingency along with a escalation.
Got it. And will all these items have life expectancy, including any technology being paid for them over 20 years for all the 5 items that you have here, or 20 years or more, just because of the length of the bond?
Yeah, we're comfortable with the length of the bond. There's not a lot of technology involved with these.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Angelos. Okay. All right, so if there's no further questions on the non-reoccurring item, I know that bond counsel, do you have some, it seemed like the board's concern would like, or is favorably would like to move that item that Mr. Hurley identified out of, I was fine with leaving it in because I think it would be good if we could have the chance, but if both you and both want to do that, I've asked bond counsel to prepare that language.
Yes, what we would do, we would entertain an amendment to delete project number 2 on Exhibit A, the KHW Green Farms Bridge construction from the list, and then that would reduce the amount to be appropriated and bonded throughout the resolution to $7,255,622. So the amendment would.
I will make that motion to do exactly that.
Thank you, John.
And I'll second it.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Is there any discussion on this item by the board? Additional discussion?
No, just if bond counsel could just reiterate, there's really no downside in waiting.
No, I mean, as was pointed out, the project is not ready to go. I think Mr. Flynn made a somewhat compelling argument that if you revisit the project next year, you might have better cost estimates. I think that was probably the most compelling reason to wait. I mean, okay.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Very good. Is there any
Excuse me. I'm told by Jared my math is wrong. Good, not a good
that's
thing.
great.
Not a good thing for your bond
counsel.
Oh, boy.
It should be $7,255,602, not. Excuse me, $22.
That's what he said. You said 7,255,622.
No, yeah, but it's not. It's 022.
Right.
Oh, 022.
Okay, so
We have second motion. I have no further questions or
Is there any comments from the public regarding this amendment on this item? Hearing none. Back to the board. All in favor of the amended motion? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, so we're going to go
We
back.
just voted on the amendment.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, we're going to go back to the main motion as amended. Is there any additional discussion from the board on the motion as amended?
Nope.
I just want to confirm with bond counsel, this is our standard bond language, and that the length of this bond is 20 years. Can you just confirm both those items for me?
Both of those items are correct, Mr. Ford.
Thank you so much. I'm good, Madam First Selectwoman.
Okay, very good. I'm going to ask if there's any comments from the public on the amended motion. We do have a strong contingent of pickleballers that are very excited about this, but I think are probably tired of sitting here. So,
I do have one comment.
all right, would you like to, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Hi,
You
my
have
name's-
to press the
I think the.
Oh,
this-
okay, very good.
We're good?
Is it
Okay.
green?
Hi, my name's Jim O'Brien. I live in Southport. In fact, you came to our house when you were running for office. Thank you. But I just want to say, we play pickleball a lot, and reserving the courts is always a challenge. And some of us have gone now to Trumbull to play because Trumbull built
Bless you.
6 brand new courts, bless you, 6 new courts like 2 years ago. And this past year, they built another 6 courts. So, you know, we're talking about incremental changes here in Fairfield, and the world is kind of passing us by in terms of capacity. So just want you to know that, you know, it's great if we do this, but I don't think the supply is going to keep up with demand long term. So it's something you may want to revisit in the future.
Well, thank you, and thank you for saying that. And to Mr. Calabrese's point, a lot of things have been sort of pushed to the side, and my philosophy is very different. And I asked all of our department heads when I first came in, well, what do you need? What's important to you? What does your department need internally to make it run better? And what projects do you want to get done? And so that's what we've been trying to do is plow through the projects, get them done, make sure, and obviously there's competing needs. You know, we have infrastructure issues, we have school construction issues, but we want to try to create a nice balance for everybody so that everyone gets to enjoy our town equally. And so we're trying our best, but I'm a little jealous that Trumbull built that many. Go ahead, Beth, go ahead.
Betsy Hume, Fairfield, Connecticut. I first want to thank Anthony for his due diligence and patience. I can't imagine the number of emails and phone calls that he has received over the last 3 or 4 years. The courts are cracking, we need more courts, where are the nets, so forth and so on. To piggyback on Jim's remarks that when our courts were built approximately 7 years ago, it was on an old tennis court. So we took what was very old to start with, refurbished it, and painted 4 lines. So we certainly have gotten more use out of that court than would normally be done. And we were sort of one of the first first towns in Connecticut to have the dedicated courts. And it was so exciting. And over the last few years, the other towns have realized the need, and they've gotten on the bandwagon. So I think it's important for Fairfield that we don't lag behind. When they first were built, we certainly thought about them in terms of being for the adult population. Well, that is not true. I have gone out there and seen a neat group of young kids from middle school and high school playing, very respectful of the rules, respectful of each other, respecting the facilities and the other people who were there. I've seen grandparents out playing with their kids, and certainly families with their children, and those of us in the senior population. Starting next week, I'm going to be volunteering my time doing an evening pickleball course at Wakeman Boys and Girls Club for the middle school and high school kids. This is only going to continue to make our sport grow. And it's exciting. People are outside. They're being active. And I think one of the other key components about pickleball versus tennis is that it's a much more social sport. It's not just one group of foursomes playing, using the courts, and then leaving. Pickleball is really based on you play a game, you then mix and mingle with people on the other courts, you play a new game, you mix and mingle. So it's the socialization as well as the exercise and the enjoyment of playing a very fun and exciting game. So Anthony, thank you, and thanks to the board.
Thank you, Betsy. Is there any additional? No. Sure, go ahead. Anthony and I played with Betsy. We picked, unfortunately, the day we picked, I think it was like 100 degrees, but we had fun.
Well, my name is Doug Goodman. I've been a Fairfield resident for 53 years, and I've watched a lot of things grow in this town. I just heard comments as I was walking up, we got to try this pickleball out. Was that you? Yeah. Well, you should, because there's like 400 that we've recognized in town playing pickleball, and I'm sure there's a lot more, but we have a list, documented list of those. So I just wanted to, again, piggyback on what Betsy and Jim said, that in playing in Darien and Westport and in Trumbull, which their populations are a lot less than ours, you just see a plethora of courts already built in the planning stages. And it, with all due respect, I love this town, but it's embarrassing to see the Tungus Hill courts and the condition there. And they're actually dangerous. You know, there's rocks that have come up through the surfaces. Yes, the town closed that court, which good for the court, not so good for us, because it's one less court we have to play with. So my concern more, and Anthony's going to shoot me because he said, Doug, I've told you this about 10 times already, is he mentioned $575,000 for the 6 courts rebuilding and then 2 new. And I'd just love to get more confidence in that you guys are going to approve them, that you're going to approve this. I know there's a certain amount of money that could be spent, whatever the budget is, $7 million or whatever you told me, Anthony. But I know there's a lot of projects that you have to weigh and delegate and allocate. I'm just proposing now, please, and I urge you to consider these 6 pickleball courts. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. And so just for for edification, so these are our non-reoccurring items, and so we have a capital planning workshop. I've started a working group last year where we talk about projects, and this would be this year's allocation, then we have capital projects that will be discussed and voted on, but we've had a lot of discussions on already. And then we put together a 5-year plan. And I put in my newsletter, it's up on the website, has a lot of good information, all the backup, what we do have, and projects we're looking to complete. But obviously, Anthony is the department head. He listens to you guys, and to others as well, you know, who have recreational teams and soccer and football and all of those things. So he brings forward what he hears to me, and these are how we start to put these lists together. And so this is I don't think anybody's voting against pickleball courts, just so you're clear.
Can you write that down?
Well, we're going to take a vote right now. So if there's no further comment from members of the public, and I do appreciate you waiting so long and for your comments. I'm going to bring it back to the board.
I'm going to further this public service announcement for pickleball courts and say just the gas used to go to Trumbull, we should factor in, because it would certainly be more environmentally friendly to keep our residents in place. And as someone with older adults for parents, and we talked earlier today about the mental health toll that the pandemic had. I think social isolation and loneliness in older adults has been proven to really have a detrimental effect. And when you offer something that's not only sound for fitness, and body, it's certainly in the mind and the spirit with the socialization. And I think it's really terrific and makes a compelling case for why we should be adding more courts, not just 6 in the future, but giving our older adults, our older residents here opportunities to be social, to be active and engaged. So I'm all for it.
Thank you, Nancy. And again, this is, we know you're on the board now for 3 years, and there's a lot of competing needs in our community, but I think it's important we balance. Everybody should be able to enjoy our town, and we need to make sure we're balancing that. So if there's no further discussion from the board,
What are we even voting on?
we are voting on the motion. I know, it took a long time. The motion,
The overall
the amended,
resolution.
we voted on the amendment. We voted, now we have the motion as amended. We've had comment from the board. We've had public comment. It's back to the board. The item as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Pickleball. Now, Board of Finance is tomorrow night. They're a much tougher crowd. Okay, bring back up.
Quote me. You can quote me.
Go ahead.
Can I add one more thing?
You can do whatever you want.
Every week, I can't tell you, like Anthony, I get phone calls and emails from people, being the ambassador for Fairfield.
Yes.
Where do I play? How do I meet people? How do I run? And my list and pieces of paper are all over the place at home. And once we get our new courts, one of the key components about pickleball is every town has set aside maybe 2 hours a week, maybe 3 hours a week for drop-in play, where you don't have to get on the phone and say, let's go play. Where's there gonna be our own private group of 2 or 3 courts? We've dedicated these 2 hours for drop-in play. Anybody can come and mix and mingle, regardless of skill, regardless of age, regardless of ability. And this is one of the most unique things about pickleball, because from that, gee, I live alone, I don't know anybody, how do I get involved? They come out, they meet people, they play, they go away happy, they've made a new friend, they have an email, and from there, that friendship only continues to grow. So building that drop-in play into our new court schedule and structure will be huge for the town. So I just add that as another wonderful benefit.
I like that. Thank you, Betsy.
Having this court.
And we are going to tap you to come, and that's our superintendent of schools, by the way, who wants to play pickleball. So, okay. So maybe we'll all play. Mr. Flynn seems to be a player. This is new. I didn't know this, Mr. Flynn, or a pickleball player. So we might have to get out there and play. So we have a lot more items on our agenda that we have to get to. You're free to stay. I'm going to probably guess you're not going to want to. But
Love to stay.
I know, but yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Tomorrow night.
Yes, tomorrow night. Thank you for coming out. It was nice to see you, Betsy.
Thank you. Can I walk in a few minutes late?
Yeah. No, the doors never get locked. No. No. I don't think they even start till 7:30. The fire training school? Did you double check? They move around.
King's Highway, the meeting tomorrow night.
Hey, Anthony, where's the meeting tomorrow night? It is the Board of Ed. It's at the Board of Ed, Chair.
So I'll hustle over there when I get home.
But I just wanted at least.
Thank you, thank you. Thanks for coming out. Nice to see you. Yes, I know.
Randy, you should tell them how much longer the meeting will be tomorrow.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
They better bring like,
14 items?
7.
you know why nothing gets done around here.
There's a hard.
All right, giddy up. Next item. We are at almost, we're an hour and a half, and we've done, okay, all right. This is the, I've lost my place now.
ARPA.
Our 9 recurring, ARPA, okay. Can I get a motion to hear and consider and adopt a resolution appropriating $760,000 for the costs related to uses of the Coronavirus State Fiscal Recovery Fund and the Local Fiscal Recovery Fund? And then you can see the full, very long resolution that you do not want me to read in the backup. And just to, do I have a motion first to approve? So moved. Thank you. Okay, so in your backup, after the resolution, the second page, it shows you the items that we had pulled off the non-reoccurring list to utilize the ARPA money for. And so, as you can see, we have the fire station rehabilitation that was on the non-reoccurring for $50,000, the shift commander vehicle replacement for $150,000, the Park and Rec Sergeant Murphy playground replacement for $150,000, police department headquarters rehab $350,000, and then fire vehicle replacement for $60,000, which totals to $760,000. And we do have the fire chief in the room, and we have the deputy chief, police chief in the room. And so I am going to open it up to the board. Who would you like to? And we have Anthony, of course, still in the room. Poor Anthony. You know, Anthony has so many projects. He just spends all of his nights at meetings answering questions about projects. Okay. Who would you like to speak to first? Tom?
Brenda?
Yes.
Yeah, can we, I'd love to hear from Jared. I want to kind of get a more global sense on the ARPA funds. How much do we have left? I know there was something that went well over, and then what got canceled here that's going under? I just want to get a general sense, Jared.
The large one that got canceled, which was in November, I want to say, was the fiber optic project. That was $1.4 million. There was also at the time, even before when all the projects first passed, there was still a buffer of about $450,000 to begin with, because we removed a project, if you recall, for the
Stage, I think.
yeah, exactly. So all in all, you know, at the ins and outs, we added some money for the Four Corners project. So at this time, assuming that all the
I'm sorry, broke up there.
Actually, Tom, you're breaking up. I don't know if you're having an issue with your internet. Oh, you're frozen, Tom.
Oh,
Tom, can you hear us?
Divine intervention. Kidding.
Yeah, she did.
Joke.
I'll text
Well,
him.
he's still there, but
In the meantime, can I ask a follow-up question?
yes.
Sure.
Is it easy to say, just again, because I am well aware and have a memory of the broad conversation, but maybe even for the public, just kind of top level, what was included in that initial ARPA that we had voted on months ago, obviously? And the specifics, I know you're mentioning them here, but is there a kind of a more global, broad sense, as Tom was starting to ask, of what's not here? but just.
What's not here that already got approved?
No, just how it came down to this list.
Of these, so
Oh.
Tom's back. Can you hear us, Tom?
My apologies. Yeah, you guys just went completely out on me.
Yeah, it's weird. You're actually signed on still on another one, but maybe, I don't know. So Nancy was just asking a question. So what, if you remember, we had the fiber optic, which was, what was it, 1 point something, that when we really this was all passed through the boards, but when we really costed out, the actual cost ballooned. Far greater.
Yep.
And so then we pulled that back. Talked a lot about this during the capital workshops, this project, that project, what happened. And then the 400K for the stage that didn't get approved. And so what we did is, remember, the Board of Finance transferred some money toward the Four Corners. And then we ended up after that with, what was it, 1.2?
So right, currently what's left after, assuming that these projects get approved, there would be about $1.4 million left. So, and we,
Well, that's more than I thought, actually.
Yeah.
Can you clarify? Left for in the fund?
Unallocated of the ARPA
and
funds.
so the thought process for us was that we didn't want to use up all the money because we didn't know what other projects may go over. We wanted to have some money there, but we also are trying a careful balance with the knowledge that there's a deadline to using the money. So we thought these were good, solid projects. Obviously, public safety, always, in my opinion, trumps pretty much everything, because when you're not safe, nothing else really matters. So these projects seemed good. We had these on the non-reoccurring. It made sense to lower the non-reoccurring amount to protect ourselves, not to have a high number there. And so that's basically what we have now.
I think I said 1.4 for the fiber optic. It was 2.4.
That's right, 2.4.
Yeah.
We have 1.4 left.
Okay. So I guess just more.
But Brendan, how were these ones the ones that came forward? I understand the public safety. The rest of them is because where they were in the pecking list. Like how were they prioritized? Just so I'm aware.
They were in the non-reoccurring list. I picked them, Tom. To be perfectly honest, I picked them.
What was the? I'm sorry, Nancy. Go ahead if you have something. I'll shut up for a minute.
Which I guess is a great segue to more my comment. All of these projects are worthy. There's no shortage of what we could do.
Right.
I totally support that, and these projects, it has my support today. But I guess you bring up a great point. Since there is still significant money to be allocated, I also respect that it's in your purview, but it might be a great opportunity for the public to be able to come before us again to, if there is that opportunity, to have them weigh in. We talked today about mental health. There have been recent issues, and it's been brought up, and we've gotten some emails about the equity piece of things and how that might be addressed post-pandemic. So I just think that we have an opportunity to hear from the public where their interests lie, and just to be able to advocate for how that money might be well spent. And again, no issue with what's before us today. I just think that we have an opportunity to hear from the public about projects going forward, what's on the hearts and minds of the community.
Well, obviously, each of the departments gets feedback. Anthony got his feedback on pickleball, that, those things kind of streamlined toward my office. But again, these were items that were already on a non-reoccurring list, vetted and sort of shovel-ready, because remember, we do have the deadline. Now, the concern I have about going too deep, and we could have picked any projects off the non-reoccurring list. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's money. It's saving us on our debt, and we're using it in a productive way that meet the needs. And we put a lot of money into mental health. If you remember, the list was extensive. We hit a lot of different areas. And the racial, as you just touched on, the racial consultant, I tried to share this many times to anyone who's written to me. Our our human resources department was literally on oxygen, and it needed additional staff. They couldn't keep up with the everyday challenges of a human resource department. I mean, like payroll and making sure this person thing, and I mean the amount of stuff that happens in an HR department, You don't really realize it. I know I never did because I was my HR department in my company, and we have a small company, so a town of 500 employees, you can imagine the amount of stuff that happens and goes through it. They also manage all the FOI requests, and there are a lot of them, and it is unbelievably time-consuming. You deal with benefits and all kinds of stuff. But we just hired our last person to round out our HR department in January, so less than a month ago. And now we're starting to click together, and our HR director did reach out to Sacred Heart and is going to be sitting down because we wanted someone who has some knowledge base to look at the blueprint. I'm not an expert. We wanted somebody who has some expertise. So we're finally kind of moving in that track, thank God, because the Board of Finance transferred the money that we had asked for. It's money I put in the budget last year but got cut, unfortunately. And so we are coming along. I'm a little worried about taking $1.4 million and saying, hey, public, come out and talk to us, because with the cost inflation, inflationary rates out there, I'm expecting a lot of the projects that were already previously approved are going to be higher than what. I mean, look at the Four Corners project. That project, when Mark Barnhart came back, when he started getting more updates, he was like, holy cow, this project's going way over. And so we were able to use that money to complete that project because the only other opportunity would have been to scale it back significantly. And that community had been waiting so long for that safety improvement and that improvement of the Four Corners. So there are, as you remember, a significant amount of projects on the ARPA list. We don't really feel comfortable until we get closer to, because if you look at the ARPA updated list, and the Board of Finance tracks this, and Jared put together a tracking thing, and Connie has to report to the federal government on a regular basis. So as we get a little closer to, projects starting to come in, and we know I think that's when if there's going to be, because again, we could say, oops, pickleball court costs more, or oh, this is up now. So I don't want to give false hope to anybody, because we should have some buffer to make sure the commitments we have already made, we are able to fulfill.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Because I totally appreciate that. That being said, I think there are people who just want to feel that they can advocate for their own, for whatever it is that they're advocating for in their particular area of interest. So it is fair to say, though, and understanding the buffer and understanding, I hear that point, and it's a valid one, but that if the public wanted to advocate, now is sort of the time to do it, because the ship hasn't sailed, or are you saying that it's really?
Like I said, I don't think,
contingency?
I'm saying I think it's too early to speculate what will happen to every project that's on that list. And I don't want to give people false hope. I mean, people can always advocate for anything they want. If you remember, I think it was last year, a large group of people in the athletic interest were advocating for the turf field. And we got tons of emails, and believe me, people are not shy about advocating in this town. I'll tell you right now. If you could come into my office for 1 week, you would see we don't have a shy citizenry. So anyway, I just don't want to give any, oh, please, come to me with all your stuff, and then I go, oh, no, all the other projects need transfers to make sure that they can be completed, and then you give people sort of false hope. So I appreciate what you're saying, but I just don't want to. I don't think we're ready. I don't think we're there yet.
Okay.
Tom, would you like to hear anything from the deputy police chief, the fire chief, or Anthony on the project list?
Really, I do have a couple questions for the fire chief, and then for the police chief. Look, that building's old. It needs a lot of work, and I totally understand that. The question I really have is, and this did come up a little bit during the capital planning meeting that was had, but it really wasn't the time or the place. The basement of that building, I thought one of the reasons we moved everything out of there was because of water concerns in that building, and I see that we might be spending money there in the basement, and I've got a little bit of concern for that. Other than that, you know, with the fire department, I certainly agree, and we did a lot of work. Chief was very helpful over the last couple of years of renovations to the firehouses, so I don't have big issues there. I do want to talk a little bit about the vehicle replacement and the shift command vehicle, though.
So, do you want to get up first, Keith, and talk about the basement?
Sure.
Because you just have one.
How you doing, everyone? Deputy Chief Broderick. Yeah, we considered the basement. So there's going to be no IT down there. It's going to be converted to a gym. So we're not going to lose servers or anything to service 911. So worst case scenario, that's stage 3 of our project. We lose a treadmill or a bike. The weights, there's no power. So we need to provide a gym for our officers. We're taking over the weight room and gym upstairs to consolidate the 2 locker rooms larger. We're going to steal that space for the women's locker room and men's locker room in phases. So it's really the only room we have left in the building to put some kind of makeshift gym. It's still going to be small, but it's going to be good cement floors for the guys who are lifting heavy. Our building shakes now as it is when they drop the weights. So we understand the concern of flooding, but the loss will be minimal. And we're more concerned about the structural, you know, getting rid of the old ECC, getting the new area built. And we also have a foundation that we started, a nonprofit for the police department, that we're going to consider a public-private partnership to buy some of that equipment. So when we get there in a couple of years.
And I remember, Tom, just to give you some color on this, so there's some, you know, obviously we have a lot more women who are serving in law enforcement. And so the old bathroom showers, you know, spaces that were of the 70s are not really adequate for what we currently have right now. So that workout area will allow the police department to update those facilities that are more appropriate for both men and women. And then they're going to work on the entranceway, safety, expand some office space, and then utilize that basement that used to be where ECC, obviously not a good place for a flood zone, is to have electronics in our 911 system, but to have, you know, weights and things that aren't going to be severely damaged, and at least give them an opportunity to be able to work out.
Thank you, Brenda, and I completely understand about the locker room situation, there being more female officers and all that. Something to consider in terms of the weights and all that, since it is a small area, since they're probably not going to be real adequate. Have we considered just going out and partnering with one of our many gyms in town and procuring memberships for our officers and a gym under a bulk rate where they can have a much more fulsome exercise experience, and we don't have the requirements to put it in the building?
Yes,
all the equipment.
Yes, we've considered. Yep, we've considered it, and our membership has indicated having the gym in the department to a quick 20 minutes when they finish or a quick 20 minutes before they start is irreplaceable. So as much as a lot of our people have memberships at other gyms as it is, the CrossFit gyms and Fitness Edge and all the little gyms around Fairfield and Bridgeport, but they still use our gym. So we still want to have something on site for these people to use in a pinch or in short notice.
It's more convenient, obviously, too.
It is.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussions on the police department item?
Not from me.
Okay, Chief?
Dennis McCarthy, Fire Chief.
Tom, do you have specific questions on the vehicles, you said?
Yeah, well, first of all, $150,000 for the shift command vehicle, and the vehicle that you have is only 4 years old. I was a little surprised by that. That sounds like a huge expense for the vehicle doesn't even have 100,000 miles on it. I know typically they get more miles on it than that, so I was taken aback by that.
So we have these vehicles on a 5-year cycle, and similar to major fire apparatus, because we're buying basically a pickup truck from Ford. that we will build out. The labor expense and time and expense really adds to the length of time needed to get that vehicle in service. So we will probably be somewhere late spring, summer of 2024 before the vehicle goes in service. So it is consistent with the time frame that we normally use. And similarly, the frontline vehicle that is currently in place will go to frontline reserve. And as I described the other night at the workshop, it will serve as a response vehicle for storm events when we have 2 assistant chiefs on duty. During maintenance of the primary vehicle, it will serve as the primary unit on the road. So we want to maintain, 2 very reliable, a newer vehicle, and then the frontline reserve to maintain that capacity. That does get put into play on a fairly frequent basis throughout the course of the year.
Yeah, so thanks, Chief. So I understand the rationale, and I understand the 5-year replacement program. At these price points for these vehicles, I'm questioning, particularly with the mileage levels, for just the command vehicle, not the big apparatus and all that. I'm questioning whether the 5 years isn't too short a period. Now, I'm not going to push the issue here. We're not incurring debt service costs on this one, given how we're financing it. But I think we really should look at whether 5 years is too short a period of time for a shift command car that's costing $150,000. Just sounds to me. I know it's the program, but I'm wondering whether it's time to revisit the program for that level.
So just a point, this is an upgrade. We are building more technology into the vehicle to serve as a first response command post. You may be familiar with the police department command post or the Fairfield County hazmat team command post. Big, slow to deploy resource, and typically we do very well with those resources for planned events. For emergency events, we don't have the capacity on scene, either the police department or the fire department, to access all the information that would be available to us to make good decisions. And that ranges from the Board of Ed camera system for in-building camera views to floor plans for major buildings, for hazardous materials, response plans and safety precautions, and being able to manage that on moment's notice within the first 5-10 minutes of on-scene time. And so we're building the capacity into that command car to serve both departments as needed for either. And it is a quantum improvement, a quantum leap in our capabilities, and it is absolutely necessary to make, and you've certainly seen all the news reports about quick decision-making and the need for expediency in the first 5 minutes of a critical event. This gives us the capacity to have good information.
I don't debate that. I honestly don't.
But it does impact the price.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that it can't last 6 years or 7 years versus 5 years, and that's really the crux of my question. Right, and where I'm going, we're getting into the point where this isn't just a command vehicle that's, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. We're getting up into really 150 to it's going to end up being 160, 170 pretty soon. And I just think we got to look at if they can't last longer. That's all.
Understood.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Yeah. And what about? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's just a comment, and it's probably math I shouldn't admit to, but when I saw that number, I also questioned it, and then I took out my calculator, and when you look at it, it's something like $400 a day, and when you think about the price that is for the protection, the safety of whoever is driving that vehicle, it seemed to me less daunting. And when you break it down that way, to me it seems like a no-brainer, but not to say you shouldn't be challenging or questioning it.
Yep.
That was sort of the
And
math
believe
that
me,
I thought about.
I saw the numbers, I questioned it. And looking at the long-range plan for the department and our capacity, I was comfortable with the number. This is going, so the fire department responds to 10,000 emergency calls a year. The command car goes to every call that has more than 2 apparatus. When 2 or more apparatus go, the commander is going to those calls. Higher level calls, greater complexity, needs a supervision and needs the resources that we would carry in the vehicle.
Sure, but it's still only 16,000 miles per year on average, which, is okay. I get it. And then the engine's running a bunch when it's not putting mileage on. I understand that too, right? But I just don't want to be beholden to say, well, we have a 5-year plan, or a 5-year policy. So when we're paying $150 or more for a vehicle, we should just arbitrarily keep to that plan, right? I want to make sure that if we're paying that much for a vehicle, we're revisiting our replacement plans to really understand, that we're getting our money's worth, right? I don't want to be just replacing them because somewhere we put a policy in place that says every 5 years we should do it.
Understood.
What about the other 60? What's that replacement?
So this was a vehicle that we, sorry to step on you. This was a vehicle we had in our operating capital budget in the department. There was an opportunity from the finance department to acquire this vehicle using ARPA funds. As you and Mr. Walsh told me years and years ago, you tell us what we need, what you need, and we'll tell you what bucket to take it out of. This is one of those circumstances.
What is this? What vehicle is this one?
So this is a staff vehicle. This is a staff vehicle that we still have a couple of Crown Vics that are in our assigned fleet. So we'll replace and we insert these vehicles at the top and then pass them down through the chain of command based on seniority to the training director will get a new vehicle and his vehicle will get passed down and a Crown Vic will get ejected into surplus.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Is there any additional questions? Tom?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, very good. All right, so we have a motion and a second. The board has discussed these transfer of non-reoccurring to ARPA. Is there any comments from the public? Hearing none. Back to the board. All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. All right. Moving around. Thank you, Chief. Isn't it? It's
Thank you, guys.
this whole building's unbelievable. They don't care. They don't care. We're dying over here. It's like, open a window, Prue. You're back there. Get some air. I can't move.
It's nice and cool where I am.
Come on. Not in this building. Cheaped out when they built this building. They didn't put enough zones in, and it's like an oven in this place. Okay. Where are we?
9. 8, 9.
8. Okay. My God, what's going on? Can I get a motion to hear and consider and adopt a bond resolution entitled "The Resolution Appropriating $6,250,000 for the costs associated with the inspection construction phase of the East Trunk Wetlands Crossing Project, authorizing a grant to reimburse $750,000 of such appropriation and authorizing the issuance of bonds in the amount not to exceed $5,500,000 to fund the balance of such appropriation." And then there's a lot of information in the backup.
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. And so I know, Tom, that you had some, this is just changing this a little bit. You want to talk a little bit about it, the change of the way?
Yeah, so if you remember, this went through the Board of Selectmen in November. Same project, same overall dollar amount. The financing was different in the sense that at the time we were proposing to use $3.5 million of the WPCA fund balance as cash to reduce the cost of the, not to reduce the cost, but to help with the cost of the project and reduce the amount of borrowing. We've been meeting with WPCA pretty extensively over the last couple of months and decided that this was what's before you now is a better path forward and is more consistent with the way that they've used fund balance in the past and how they plan to use it in the future. So effectively what you have here is the full amount and then minus the $750,000 in a grant. The remaining amount, the $5.5 million, would be bonded using GO bonds, and the debt service would be paid for by the WPCA. And just so for a little more background, this was rejected by the Board of Finance at the time after it went through the Board of Selectmen, and so we are back here. Normally we would have just taken your acceptance back then, but because there was that slight alteration in the financing of it, we're having to come back to the board for its approval.
Hey, Jared, have you front-run this with the Board of Finance now? Was there rejection based on how it was financed or other considerations?
The rejection, so there were a couple of things. There were some questions about the increase in the cost, which is just, it's what it is. And I know that Bill Hurley has some background information on why the cost went up. There was also a concern about the financing overall of the WPCA. And so we're working.
I still have that concern, by the way.
So I think I'm just going to jump in and, obviously I've had a lot of discussions I've had discussions with the chairwoman offline on this item. And I think what's happening, and I don't know if it's happening with the whole board, but maybe some of them, including the chairwoman, that I think they're conflating all of the projects that WPCA has on their sort of, capital plan. And we've been discussing this, obviously, since March of last year. And two members of the Board of Finance are on that. And so I don't know, there's this, like, oh my God, we have so many projects. We should all halt and make sure we have this tight understanding of what each project costs. And we're not going to have a tight understanding of each project cost. There are projects, the wastewater treatment upgrade, slotted sort of, as $120 million. Who knows what that project's going to be? And so I think there's been, based on what I'm hearing, there's this conflation that we need to have everything understood, so thought out before we move forward with the project. And, listen, the WPCA is an independent authority, but it works in partnership with the town. So there are a lot of questions surrounding the future projects, how they're getting funded. And I do also believe there should be a long-term plan. But we need more information, analysis, in order to put that plan together. And we have old reports, data that needs to be updated. We're currently doing studies in specific neighborhoods on the I&I to see where stormwater is entering our system. I mean, there's all these different things going on. And the bottom line is that the East Trunk Sewer project is like a critically important infrastructure project that services 2/3 of our community, but also for the planned development projects coming down the pike. we also, very importantly, have received $3.75 million in state grant money. And playing around with that is concerning to me, because you need to move forward with this project. And so I understand the concern. Everybody's getting very nervous about these projects. But, you know, Tom, you know it as well as I do. I mean, we said this the other night at the Capital Planning meeting with the Board of Finance. There hasn't been a significant project from WPCA in 15 years. Is that my fault? No, it's not. I don't know why projects weren't getting done. I have no idea. But as I said earlier, my philosophy is, what do you got, and let's get it done. And because we need to fix things. We can't just sit here and keep pushing off projects. So I understand that people want to have a deeper dive, work more closely with the WPCA, and look at the projects, because they're big ticket items, and they scare the hell out of a lot of people, and I get it. But at the end of the day, this project has been fully vetted. Bill Hurley knows. How long you've been working on this project, Bill Hurley? I mean, oh my God. 5 years. So, you know, this is a real issue. We have $3.75 million we've been approved. And frankly, I think it's like irresponsible not for the Board of Finance to just keep kicking this down the road, because we are not going to have all the answers to every single project question on the WPCA capital list anytime soon. This is a lot of work. There's a lot of things that have to be done. And so this project needs to be done. And again, it's a 5-year-old project, and we need to move forward. So that's just my 2 cents on this item. Nancy wants to say something, Tom. So.
Yeah, I mean, I fully understand the need, having served and listened in on the meetings on East Trunk Line. I fully appreciate how important and how almost desperate it is that we get this done. And I don't want to use the word desperate, but I get that it has to be a priority. My concern is, so we approved it in December. It went to the Board of Selectmen, or the Board of Finance. They rejected it, and it made me look twice and think about it. And some things have since come to light, and I did have conversations with Mr. Hurley and both the chair and the vice chair of the WPCA and expressed my concerns, which, so Mr. Hurley knows that my concerns aren't personal about the need or desire to get this project done. But I've been listening to those Board of Finance meetings, and at the last meeting, there was a pretty robust discussion around breaking out costs and needing more information. And I guess I would want to know what the harm is in letting the Board of Finance have that conversation, because, you know, I'm not the financial expert. We're not having those robust financial conversations here. I don't know what the greater implications are. And it seems like the Board of Finance is still waiting on information. And so I guess the bottom line for me is, what's the harm in waiting? Let the Board of Finance have that conversation in the light of day, so we can really hear what they have to say, the questions they're asking, so that we can consider and make an informed decision. On top of some of the concerns I have, that this is such a big ticket item, you know, and I'd love to have a public discussion about what infrastructure is in place for oversight. So it's twofold, and if I were asking a pointed question of you, Jared, I would say, can we wait till the Board of Finance has that conversation, have it come back to us, so that we're making a decision with real broken out information?
I would say anything's possible, Nancy, but again, you know, I've had discussions with the chairwoman, and I listened to the meeting. They've had multiple discussions with WPCA, with Mr. DeVanzo, with everybody. And what I glean from my conversations with the chairwoman is she wants to see all these broken out, more detailed numbers on projects that are happening down the pike. Now, we will never know exactly how much things are cost, because we need to update studies and data. But again, that doesn't mean you stop doing projects that are here, like been studied for 5 years, just received a grant, was at the top of the list to be completed, And I think that is completely separate from deciding what are we going to do with all these projects, because my understanding from the chairwoman is she said she wants it broken out in a certain way, but I mean, I was sitting, obviously, I'm the chairperson of this capital working group that's been meeting for, since March of last year, and I don't know why it needs to be broken out in any other way. The current amount of money needed for those WPCA projects as proposed, and some of them are just hypothetical numbers because we don't have data, and we won't until they get really flushed out. I use the word flushed.
That's funny.
I know. Sorry.
That's good.
I had a little light in the mood there. But we're not going to get there because it was so, I mean, you don't need to have it in any different slot. WPCA's projects right now are more than what they have in their fund balance. That's black and white, simple math. Doesn't matter which way you put it or what column you put it in. It's more. You're on there.
Yeah.
You should know. So, I mean, it is what it is. And so everybody's going to have to figure out how we're going to dice this up and pay for it. That's not going to happen over one conversation. This is a project that's shovel ready, that literally could blow, and we could be having, how long do we need to discuss all these other projects? This project's vetted. It's gotten a grant. The state of Connecticut vetted it. It's all vetted. Now, obviously, if it moves forward and it gets approved, then I asked the chairwoman to put it on her agenda. She wants more information. I don't know what other information you need. I mean, my God, we have so much information. You could choke a horse with it. But the bottom line is, if the project, once the project gets approved, then it goes out to bid, and then you have a project manager who watches the project. I mean, listen, I personally do not want to get the call at 3 o'clock in the morning that the East Trunk sewer line failed and 2/3 of our town can't flush their toilets or take a shower. I don't want that call. And so I want to fix this East Trunk sewer line. It's an important, and it's a critically important infrastructure.
Can I answer your question directly about the breaking out? What we presented last week was I'll call it a modified 10-year plan. There were 5 years worth of projects that were slotted for each year, and within that, the WPCA capital plan, it was very clearly laid out how much the debt service related to those projects in those first 5 years was going to be. There's a line item there. It says, here's how much the debt service is, and it assumes that the WPCA would pay for all that debt service. Now, with that plan, it did get us through those first 5 years using the fund balance, but it quickly gets depleted to nothing after that, which is where, really that's where the rub is. What happens after those 5 years? There are so many questions, as Brenda was talking about. We kind of put a placeholder of $120 million for a new facility. That study that was done, that calculated the cost to do a new facility, is now 7 or 8 years old from the time that it started. We need to get more information about that. So before we start slotting dollar amounts especially for a huge project like that, we need to have a better understanding of what the cost is and go back at that and probably dig into that study or whatever new information we get to know, decide what's necessary in the study, what can wait, and what can just be, doesn't need to be done right, immediately. So, to go out, especially in this case, to go out 10 years and come up with a financial plan at this point going out 10 years would be meaningless. It would be completely meaningless because we don't know the costs of these projects. We're completely 100% committed to doing a 10-year financial projection for WPCA. But we need a ton more information. We don't know how many grants we're going to get, what the availability of grants are, low-interest loans. we need to come up with a plan for what the general rate structure is going to be for the users of the sewer. How much bonding would we potentially do that the general taxpayers would do? But, even before we get there, again, we need to figure out how much these things are going to cost. So what we did with the plan that we put forward is we had a report done on the pump stations. Those are identifiable costs. They're finite. And then that's what we put into the first 5 years of the plan, in addition to a couple of the East Trunk projects. And so that's what we included because we knew, had an estimate of what those costs, a good estimate of what those costs would be. And that's our starting point. And so we're gonna build from there. And again, we want to do a long-term financial plan. We need a lot more information.
So can I ask a couple of follow-up questions to that? Again, I would love to hear from Mr. Hurley just what you asserted about, and I know that fixing this would relieve some of the pressure, no pun intended, on the system. However, the concern is I don't think anyone is raising, at least what I listened to and on the Board of Finance, is raising the legitimacy or the importance of this project. But I don't think it was just and I would say it was not I don't think, just the chairwoman who is raising concerns. I was hearing it both sides of the aisle, multiple people really questioning the mechanism and the funding mechanism. And so when I think about the different roles that we play, Board of Selectmen saying, yes, this is important, go forward, and the Board of Finance being the check and balance and the body that says, yes, we can afford this and this is how we're going to do it, and they're raising questions and concerns, it just makes it difficult for me in this position to feel like I'm making a fully informed decision. And then, as I said, I do have some sort of like infrastructure, how the project's going to be managed. I have questions about the immediacy, like when you say you don't want people calling you at 3 a.m. That's not a situation anyone wants to be in, but how imminent is that? So I guess it's like a three-pronged question for different people.
Yeah, so what I would say to that is that there's no vote that would be taken out a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. There would be no votes taken on that. What's before you now, and if we extrapolate out over the next 16 months, there are a few projects that are on the capital plan for WPCA. I can tell you that just those projects, if 100% of the debt service is funded by the WPCA, they are fully funded. So we have the funding in place through using their fund balance, and that the debt service would be fully paid and still leave a balance in the fund balance. That's not addressing anything beyond those 16 months, but this is what's in front of you and what you're going to vote on, and hopefully vote for.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. I'm going to go, Nance, you're our eyes and ears on WPCA on that board as our representative. What are they talking about relative to the financial plan? Because I see where you're going and I understand it and largely concur, but that should be something that emanates from that board working with Jared. So where are they on that? What's your take on the WPCA's board and their oversight of this kind of financial planning?
Yeah, I'd love, Joe Devanzo's in the room, and I would love to have him as the vice chair, because I know he has met on many occasions with Jared to discuss this very thing, and no one's going to represent that better than he is. So I would love to defer to him.
So I'll just jump in. So Nancy, what specific, you are on this board, so I'm assuming you know what Joe's, doing, and you guys are talking.
A lot.
So what specific questions do you need answered? Because this is our board, so I don't think our board, and let me just preface by saying, this board already voted for this. So we voted to approve the East Trunk sewer line. This is coming back in a slightly very varied language. But We voted for it. So as, to your point, the Board of Finance has its role, the Board of Selectmen has its role, and the RTM has its role. And I don't think they should be conflated. So, what question, so my question to you is, what question do you need answered for your own self?
I guess it would be that,
As
because I
someone
don't.
who's on the WPCA, as our liaison.
Right, but I think it's sort of both things. I still also wear a townside hat, so I understand wearing my WPCA hat, the importance of this project, and yet when the Board of Finance is raising legitimate questions and concerns, it just leaves me in a place about, and I think it would be information that would be helpful, because when members of that body, not just one person, is saying, we would like this information, the breakout, and I hear you saying it's not what you're saying, it's like impossible, it's meaningless. I would love to hear that discussion from them with their particular purview so that I can make an informed decision today, because the difference, that is the difference. The funding mechanism is exactly the rub. I would like to hear again about some of the infrastructure, how that project would be handled, because I know that engineering has lots of projects that they're taking on, and, yeah.
Hey, Nance, you just hit on something. My apologies for interrupting, but it's an excellent point, and it's one of my questions. Is the Board of Finance, is the financing mechanism the rub? Is it the overall financial plan that they have the rub with? Is it the finances specific to this project? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, because if it's the financing is the rub, that actually is squarely in the lap of the Board of Finance to actually provide direction as to how these projects get funded. If it's the actual estimates to do these projects, that's the rub. That's actually, in my opinion, squarely in the lap of WPCA to come up with valid and justifiable estimates and prioritization of these projects. Or is it something else? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I also think, again, when they rejected on the grounds of the finances and then sent it back, and it's a different model, and they've raised questions about it, then I just don't feel like I'm in a position to make a fully informed decision about it wearing my townside hat. So, again, I may be in the minority here, and I would like to hear.
Yeah.
I'm
just trying to get a sense of where the rub is. I have my own views on this, which I'm happy to share, but I'm just trying to understand.
Well, why don't you share? I would love to hear from you in terms of your questions, because it might help inform some answers for me.
Yeah. First of all, Mr. Devanzo's in the room, and that's great. I have an enormous amount of respect for him, having worked with him for years on and off on issues such as these. But I think what's come to light to my attention recently is that some of the estimates that had been provided previously for WPCA projects, and perhaps the number of projects as a whole, have been dramatically different than what I'm accustomed to hearing from WPCA in the past. And at least in my conversations with certain Board of Finance members, that's also been something that's been an eye-opening experience for them. So that's very disconcerting when projects come back so much more expensive than originally thought, when we believe the number of projects have come back significantly more than what they were. And then when the total amount over a 10-year period or so has come back so radically different, at least initial estimates, that causes concern. So, I think that is a valid point. Then I take a look at how they're going to fund it. I actually agree with the way this is now being funded, and if that came back from the Board of Finance to do it in this manner, kudos to them. I'd like to hear from Jared if that's exactly the case. And then the third point is I get down to this specific project in a whole. Number one, I did approve this project because the need for it is clear. This is a need, not a want. So I think we've already seen, when not taking care of some of the WPCA needed expenditures, what's happened, and unfortunately the beach community has lived with some of the ramifications of that recently, and we had to do emergency appropriations really to fix something that probably should have been done sooner. In that regard, I don't want to hold up the east side sewer line because of that. That said, I do have a concern over the increased costs relative to what was put forth before, and I want to understand that. I had an understanding that perhaps it was erroneous, and I'd like to hear from Mr. Hurley exactly why those costs grew so much from what was originally estimated. If I can get by that hurdle, I can approve this again because I agree with the financing and I know the criticality of getting this done. And I also understand that there's a grant available to help defray some of the costs. And I want to make sure we take advantage of that. Mm-hmm. That does not at all indicate that I am comfortable with the go forward understanding of the finances of the WPCA, because actually I'm not.
Can I ask him a follow-up question?
I would, just
and
1 minute. No, I appreciate that, Tom, and I concur with you that I feel like the WPCA needs a tune-up. The whole process, how it works, how it relates to the charter. It's this independent agency. And so, yeah, I agree that there needs to be some retooling of that, or that department, which is independent and has a commission. My understanding, and I've been told that they used to vote on their budgets. I guess Ed Bates, and I chatted with him. When he was a selectman, he was on the WPCA for the board, and they voted on budgets before they came to the town. And they, I guess, don't do that anymore. So there are some, I don't know, we have some work to do, I think. I know, let's just say that. But again, I agree with you that this project is crucial and it's critical. And I think there's no reason why we shouldn't pass this. And then the Board of Finance can ask a billion questions if they want, and then decide if they want to pass it or not. I don't think that prevents us from doing our jobs as selectmen.
So can I ask a follow-up question? Because,
sure.
Tom,
sure.
You made an interesting case, because I kind of came in here thinking one way, and I also came in with an open mind. How do you then, having served on the Board of Finance, when you're uncomfortable with something, knowing that you have an opportunity to sort of like, I'll use stop the bleeding for a lack of a better word, but
Yeah.
if you don't love a process and you don't, at what point do you say, okay, we have to stop kicking this down the road, kind of resolve what our issues are, are with the WPCA, and then, or are we just kind of perpetuating because we're putting a Band-Aid on something that's absolutely necessary?
Well, I think this project is not a Band-Aid. This is a legitimate project.
I'm speaking metaphorically.
Right. But, I just want to point out that, again, and Tom, I apologize, but the Board of Finance can ask these questions. This is not even on their agenda tomorrow. Now, how are you supposed to ask questions if you don't even have it as an item? It's irresponsible not to have it on the agenda and ask the questions and then vote yes or no. So it's a project, to your point, Tom, it's critical. It's a need, not a want. And so I don't really know whatever it is. My questions have been completely answered. I have listened to this, obviously, to ad nauseum. I know more about this project than I think any other project on the capital list. I mean, we've been talking about this thing for years, talking about it forever. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'm sorry, Tom. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no problem. Nancy, since you directed it at me, and it's very valid, the question is very valid. When I voted for this back in November, I believe it was, or October, somewhere in that time frame,
December?
I think I actually said this was the last one that I would vote for without a more fulsome economic plan from the WPCA. And I stand by that because I do have my concerns going forward. And I do think, I don't know about their operations. In other words, I don't know whether the commission, I'm not trying to besmirch the commission in any way, shape, or form. It's not an area of expertise for me. But I do know about the finances, and I do know the information that I've been getting out of there, at least as it relates to these projects, as I articulated earlier, has changed over time and grown dramatically, and that scares me. And that was the reason for my commentary back last fall when I made it, that I do think there needs to be a review of the finances here, because things have just changed so dramatically. That said, with this specific project, the criticality of it, the time frame of it, the outside funding available of it, and the fact that I think we do now have hard costs, which again I want to explore just a little bit here to make sure I understand it with Mr. Hurley. But barring that, I don't think this project is something that we can put aside right now, because I think it's been put aside too long. That doesn't mean that there's not very real concern and consideration over the go forward financing of this critical function for the town.
Thank you, Tom. And so, and listen, it's 20 of 7, so here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to have Bill Hurley come up and go through what Tom is just asking. I think it's important for the board and for the public, if they're listening or want to look back at this. If you could get up and talk a little bit, Bill, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, one of the first things to highlight was the original estimate, which was last year, December 2022, was before any soil testing was performed. As you know, a lot of times with these capital workshops, we have to try to estimate costs like a year and a half ahead of time. And then sometimes, especially if they are more of a priority, we try to get them done quickly. And sometimes it's done before we're able to do the full, complete testing. So the $2.4 million estimate was before testing was performed. We have a technical memorandum from the consulting engineer of why the costs went up. And it did take us by a little bit of a surprise as well. Because again, we were still talking relatively a short section of pipe. We had based the original estimate on typical wetland crossings that we've experienced, and there haven't been too many to go by. But just as a highlight, I'll just highlight some of the things that that were added to the costs. The support of excavation, we had to go much deeper than originally thought. We had to revise the shoulder piles. We had to do more, obviously more testing and borings, which revealed that the groundwater and that the groundwater was I guess it'd be shallower than what we thought, so we were going to have to increase dewatering. The add-ons that the consultant had listed was cradle and support beams, and that was based on the new information of the soil conditions and reports and the advancement of the design. That increased the cost to $217,000. The site access, we thought we could access it from a shorter distance from Ardmore Street, but now the consultant is recommending that we attack it from the Ash Creek Boulevard side. That being said, that's $80,000 more. As I mentioned before, the supportive excavation meant more piles based on the soil conditions, deeper installation for those piles. Almost $1.3 million was just that alone. Dewatering and also the longer time of construction. When we first thought of the project, we thought it was going to be 8 months. Now it's 13 to 16 months. So the
What drove that? Bill, what drove the increased length of time?
That was really based on, as I said, the additional borings and the piles that we have to put in. There's obviously handling of the cap. There's specific environmental concerns that we have to. Actually, there was a section where it took us 6 months to get all the information together for where the cap is and all that, and then we even had DPW go out and do a couple of test pits just about 6 weeks ago to confirm where the cap was and where it wasn't. And as we excavate for this line, we're going to have to peel off a section. There's a small section that we have to peel off, and so you have to take care of that environmental cap a specific way. There's wetland restoration. That was another $100,000. And then, again, the bypass pumping. That was another. We have to do all this work while we have 2/3 of the town still flowing. And that was, we might have originally underestimated that, where you have to keep the lines running. And since the proposed line is going to be in essentially the same location as the existing, we actually have to do a sister temporary line, bypass line next to it, and we have to use that line with the soldier piles and kind of a pile cap resting on it just for temporary flow so that we can continue operations. Anyway, that was another $1 million.
Bill, is the new line going to be deeper than the existing line?
No, it can't be, because it has to be the same elevation because there's so low flow. It's only like zero, if I recall, it was like 0.02%. So it's extremely flat.
What the line was when we originally estimated it? Did we miss?
Well, the water line, when we did the original tests, some of the water line information was, well, I'm just going to arbitrate. I don't have it by memory, but we'll just say we thought it was going to be 5-foot depth of water, and it ends up being 3-foot depth of water, just as an example. So that encourages, obviously, more pumping and dewatering. And then, as I said, we also had the consultant look at doing a separate line, which then you wouldn't have to worry as much bypass pumping, because we would keep the line going while we put the new one in. But so that all those played into it, and it ended up being a $2.9 million increase on that. And then the other thing, to answer Nancy's question on the construction management, when we thought the project was going to be 8 months long, we were estimating, again, similar to bridge projects and other sanitary sewer projects, maybe $200,000 or $300,000 for inspection. We have, now again, this is only preliminary. We're going to most likely go out to bid for this with, an RFP and an RFQ, but we have to have 4 inspecting teams on site at different stages. We'll obviously have to have a daily inspection team there where we'll have an inspector to verify and watch the contractor like a hawk, so to speak. It's standard on any large project to have daily inspection. We'll have our own team of inspections, mainly our construction manager from the WPCA. She'll go out there, if not every day, certainly every week to check on the site, and engineering can support her with that. If she's unable to do that, we can go out. We have a couple inspectors that we can go out on occasion and help her out on that. Then there's the design services during construction. If for some reason, even after all this testing that we've done or whatever, there still might be a surprise underneath. That's one of the things that is very frustrating. Unlike buying a car or a washing machine where you could see it, you know what you're buying, we're always have a blindfold on any of these projects. It's everything that's underground. We can only do what the tests and the boring and composition tests reveal. So we have to have somebody on board with that. You need a special, as I said, the supportive excavation. These are going to be like 15 feet deep, and so you have to have steel sheathing to support so that you can get a machine in there, maybe even a worker in there to connect the piping and all that. So you need to have that dry, you need to have it safe. That was a cost we had figured out, but nowhere near the cost that they are now expecting. There's a construction management and inspection. That was the daily inspection I was referring to. But then there's also a special inspections. And then there's also, because we're touching the cap, we have to hire another company who had they're the LEP, the Licensed Environmental Professional. And so we have to hire that company out to come out for about a week and a half, 2 weeks, to make sure that when we're near the cap or that we touch the cap, that it's placed back properly and reinstalled properly, because they have to sign off on that, because they're the ones that signed off on the original. So all those is for inspections.
This is a more fulsome explanation of the increase in costs than I recall being given in the past. I do recall asking the question. I think it might have been privately or what have you, and it was a combination of longer pipe and more depth. This is a bit more detailed. Let me ask a question. Did you have this conversation with the Board of Finance when you originally presented this item? Because what came back to me was some of the concern of some of the members was the fact that they didn't completely understand the vast increase in cost, and that gave them the impression of kind of a project that was, for lack of a better word, and forgive this, a little bit out of control or not completely understood. And that's my expression, not theirs, but I'm trying to, portray what I was told. What was your discussion with them when you talk to them about this?
Well, you are correct. When before the Board of Finance, we only had a limited number, limited amount of information on that, and that was probably one of the reasons why that they had, I'm going to call it, postpone the vote. We had some of the information, but not all of it. The consultant had done the bid form in a little bit different way than what we're typically used to seeing. And they also basically gave it to us only a couple of weeks before we presented it to the Board of Selectmen and then the Board of Finance. And so knowing that the price had gone up, as I said, we were kind of shocked about it as well. We had asked main reasons, and they gave us some generic ones, which we, took down and then, gave to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. Once that got denied by the
length of pipe, it was the depth. I mean, there was certain information.
Well, there was chain supply issues, right? Stuff like that, right? And so all that was true, and it still is true. But we obviously have a lot more detailed information. Once we told the consultant we needed more, and we needed more information to present and be more descriptive on the reasons why it had gone up. And so they have provided that, and I think once they review it all, and like you've heard it here tonight, it does at least make more sense that it wasn't just off the cuff. And even despite all this, the bids are going to really tell us the exact amount that's going to, that's going to dictate how much the project really costs. Because even with these best estimates that we have, it is possible the bids might be a little bit lower. Maybe we get lucky. It's possible it could be higher. Hopefully not, that's for sure. But that's the problem that we have with almost every major project, going forward, is we do our best to rely on recent bids and information. But obviously this past year, especially in the fall there, some of the prices were a little out of whack. I just attended a webinar on that, and at least they're leveling off now.
I think part of this is sticker shock. I think it was the sticker shock of the overall budget numbers over the next number of years the number of projects over the number of years. And quite frankly, and please don't take this in the wrong way, but I don't think there was the best foot forward put on explaining the vast increase in prices on this project. And I think that gave some people a legitimate cause for concern. I know I raised some questions about it. I think that's probably what happened too with Board of Finance members. If I were to, again, intuit, I don't want to speak for anybody, but that's part of it.
Well, you did give us a warning that you approved it, but you had some hesitation. So I do remember that. And as I said, at least now we have a better understanding and a more descriptive reason for that. It was just a matter of, as I said, we had only gotten the information slightly before the meeting, and we now at least had time to prepare for it. We are concerned about timelines, and that was maybe another reason on our part of trying to, quote, rush it through a little bit. We did get, I think, which will be our last extension, and Brenda mentioned it before, we have some grants here involved for this, and then we just got the $3 million grant for the other section of the East Trunk Line. A lot of times these have deadlines. They are willing to give you an extension, but after a while they say, no, that's it. And so, we were able to get what I think is going to be our last extension for this project, but that might have been one of the reasons why before we had gotten that extension, we were a little nervous, and so that's why we went forward with it. And the timing, because as I said, with 16 months, you want to be able to do with only one winter, quote, winter shutdown. Now, again, this winter maybe it's not too bad, but who knows what next winter will bring. And you just don't want to stop a project midway through in the winter if you don't have to, but sometimes you do, and then it just prolongs everything. That you want to make sure you can only get it through one winter rather than two, because then you're really taking your chances. Don't make a 16-month project into 24, 28.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, thank you.
Can I
Oh,
ask
sure.
you a question?
No, thank you.
So there are a lot of great experts weighing in, and obviously those consultants will report into the WPCA. Who sort of owns this, if you will, on the town side?
Well, it's always been the WPCA. They're in control of their projects. The commission usually has a way of financing them, listing them. Like they all constantly work with engineering. They work with the finance department. They work with DPW when it's applicable. For this one here, as I said, the construction manager would work on this project. Engineering would offer assistance when needed. We will have a full-time inspector on this project. That's one of the reasons the budget had gone up as well. And because we have almost $700,000 or $750,000 worth of inspection and specialists inspecting this project. That's part of the $6.25 million.
Right.
So we'll have an inspection team, so to speak.
Right, but is there, when it comes down to it, is there one, that's a lot of people involved. It's a lot of.
Yeah, well, that's what the project manager will do that, and from our department. And again, depending on who, it is possible that these inspectors will come from the same firm, and it is possible that they'll be different firms.
I just imagine moving forward, and this can be part of our more fulsome discussion, Mr. Flynn, to borrow your phrase, that without one single person, I think this is an opportunity to talk about future projects, who kind of is on the hook, and the WPCA, maybe perhaps one of the other things we need to talk about, it's a volunteer board that serves as a very important check and balance. But there needs to be, I think, sort of a counterpart on the town side that is, has ownership of these things, because it is a huge ticket item. And as I said, I came in here sort of thinking one way, and I have since changed my mind in terms of moving forward. But I think I share your concern, Tom, that, we need, in the absence of like a better line, pun intended, for the way that the WPCA communicates with the town, and and having a person, and the funding mechanisms and all of that. And again, I know conversations have been had with the vice chair and the chair with the CFO, but I just think we need to have a really 360 review of how things are managed and how it happens that we move forward with these projects, especially at such a big ticket item, especially with all the projects we have coming down the line. So I have no interest in having that happen for residents where they're flushing, and I know the importance of this project, but I am gonna support it, but want to make sure it goes on the record, my concerns, my hesitations, my questions, my challenges for sort of the next phase. And I will, this is somewhat of a leap of faith, and we'll leave it to the Board of Finance to work out that piece of things. But just going on record with my questions, challenges, and concerns.
Agreed, and I think, you know, to my point earlier and to your point now, we need to really take a good hard look at this, the entire independentness of the WPCA. And, I mean, I personally think and would like an operational audit of it, but that doesn't, again, impact the project. The project is a project, and project managers manage projects. And it's part and parcel why we reorganized the engineering department, because we felt like the appropriate people, the appropriate skill sets weren't in that department to be able to manage all of these projects. And Bill, you know, does a great job, but he's only one person, and he does have to sleep, a little bit anyway. And, you know, so adding, you know, adding project manager to our engineering department, adding additional engineers. We have a whole different engineering department than we had when I came here. It's totally different. And so, and that's great, because they're great. But again, project managers manage large projects. And everybody kind of helps out, right? Engineering's involved, everybody's involved. All right, well, if there's no further discussion on this item from the board, I don't think there's anybody who wants to comment it from the public, but I will ask. Mr. Devanzo, please, feel free. Oh, you're not as the WPCA Vice Chair?
Joe Devanzo, 1446 Jennings Road. I've sat through and I've watched all the presentations, and I go to a lot of meetings now. One thing I will observe that we have lost, and I think this is me personally saying this, not my commission. Mm-hmm. We have lost the advocate and the advocates we used to have when, and I'm not sure I can mention names, but when the previous director of DPW was removed, and then his interim replacement was also removed, they were our liaison. Not only were they our liaison, they also came to these meetings. I was watching the chief, I was watching the assistant chief of police, Parks and Rec. They came in here and presented and had all the answers. Mm-hmm. We've lost all that support. That is a huge issue, the communication between whatever. No matter what Jared and I do from a financial point of view, there's a big piece missing. And I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would just, you know, for the record, clarify that those two individuals both were arrested, allegedly involved in a public corruption scandal. So I think we have a lot of things that need to be changed. We took a look at this in the charter. It's not clear. And so that's why I say I think we need an operational audit on that whole system. Who's in charge, everybody has different roles and responsibilities, right? For example, excuse me, Park and Recreation has the authority, right, to do specific things that I do not have the authority to do. The Historic Commission has the authority to deny applications of people who are building in the historic district. I have no control over that. They're appointed people, right? Same thing. So we're obviously walking into a town that was in some serious trouble 3 years ago. And COVID 4 months in, there was a lot of things that needed to be dealt with. And, we're looking at this now very closely, and I think it needs a good look, and I think we need to do some changes, make some changes. But based on input from people who know it really well. And so I think that's kind of where I am. But I do support this project. I want to kind of focus us back because it is 7 o'clock, and our bond counsel has been here now a while.
Can I make a follow-up comment to that?
Okay, and then I would like us to get back to the project.
Yeah, and I would just say that to me, it is salient in terms of the project we're looking at, and I think our previous speaker from the public, Mr. Devanzo, alluded to something really important. For getting past specific people, I think if we are forward-looking, having that advocate and the liaison is a really important part of any process, because that person can take ownership and do all the things that someone in the previous role, and again, specific people aside, for alleged crimes. I think we need to think about the way we can move forward and in the best way possible to have better communication between that board and the town.
And again, that's why I think we need an organizational audit, because it may be that there needs to be a reorganization of the WPCA department so that it has its own person who manages the finances and things of that nature. You know, sometimes there's a person who may have a set of skills, operational skills of some sort, and maybe not the financial skills. So, you know, this is something I think would be important for me to know, and I think for everybody to know. And so having an operational audit is something I'm looking into, because I think we need one.
And back to the specifics of 8 and 9, can we just clarify for the record what the vote for 8 is versus the vote for 9?
It seems like it's both, right? The second is just the resolution.
The vote on 8 would be to vote on the resolution for the funding. The vote on 9, they're on the agenda a little weird, I will agree with that. The vote on 9 is the vote on the supplemental resolution you have to approve the signing of the memorandum of understanding. If you recall, when we did this before, we have a vote on the bond resolution, and then we have a second vote on the supplemental resolution, which authorizes and directs a memorandum of understanding between the town and the WPCA as the separate enterprise fund, whereas the WPCA agrees to pay the debt service on the bonds from user fees or reserves.
Okay, so can you break that down a little bit, so a little more user-friendly, what 9 is?
9 is a vote to authorize and direct the memorandum of understanding between the
Right.
WPCA and the town.
It's codifying 8, basically?
No, 8 is approving the funding.
Okay.
And the issuance of the bonds.
Right.
9 is saying that the predicate for the issuance of the bonds and the funding is that the WPCA enters into an MOU with the town and agrees to pay the debt service on the bonds, so that the town issues the bonds, but the debt service is actually paid by the WPCA from user fees or its reserves, not by the taxpayers.
Got it. So basically, the discussion that we've been having about the mechanism is really the discussion that would have been more germane to 9.
I think it's probably germane to both.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so, sorry, I just want to clarify so I understand exactly. So the 8 is just that we support the funding period, and then 9 is just to approve the agreement between the two entities.
Yes, think of 8 as approving the funding and the bonding, and think of 9 as approving the mechanism for repayment of the bonds.
So, for instance, help me think this through if you would. If I want to support the project and the funding, yes to 8, but if I'm still a little like, I want the Board of Finance to figure it out and don't necessarily feel like I can make the most informed decision about the process?
Probably not, because I think the discussion this board has had before, and I think the discussion that's always been had also at the Board of Finance, is that if the town is in effect going to issue bonds on behalf of the WPCA,
Yeah.
that the WPCA should be paying the debt service.
I got it.
So,
Thank you
Anyway.
for clarifying. I got
Okay.
it. I know where I stand.
Okay, are we good?
I'm good.
Okay, so we have them, all right, so we're going to take them separately, John?
I think you started taking them separately, so it's probably easiest to just vote on 8 and then make a motion and approve and vote on 9.
Okay, so we have, we did read item number 8, we had a second. And so let's, all in favor of that item?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Item number 9, and I will not,
Make a motion to waive the reading.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so item number 9 is according to what's written on the agenda, and the bottom line is the language of the resolution, allowing the town to enter into the MOU.
I'm so moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion?
I'm good.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, can I get a motion to consider and act upon the tax refunds as recommended by the tax collector in the amount of $8,088.68?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 By the way, thank you to Mr. Sastrom for being here.
Okay. I know it's late, so I just want to mention it is February kicked off Black History Month, and I did share in my newsletter. I don't want to go through the whole thing, and I know everyone's tired, but I hope that people do take the opportunity to go to the library, to research, to learn more. I was just listening to Melissa in the morning on WICC, where she was talking about various organizations highlighting Connecticut, former residents who did great things in our state. So I hope people take the time to do these things, and there's lots of stuff going on at the library that can, teach. And even Melissa was saying that one of the apps her child utilizes like a fun thing, like a learning thing, this whole month has something new to learn about Black History Month, and this very young child who's in preschool clicks on it every day. So there's like these little things, that can really promote knowledge and reverence, really, for Black History Month. So I want to just mention quick, there's 2 food drives being held this Saturday and Sunday. One is the Super Bowl food drive at Assumption Church. They do this every year. It's really nice, and the donations go to Operation Hope. So, if you want to drop off some stuff or drop off, a check or some cash to them, that's really good to do. And there's also one being held at the Sherman Green by former students of the Fairfield Public Schools who are members of the Fairfield Equity Coalition, and their donations will go to families in need in the Fairfield Public Schools. So this is all on our town's website, but I think these are 2 great ways to just do something good for our community. That's it.
Hey,
Oh, go ahead, Tom. Go ahead. It's fine. Go ahead.
No, one of the things you brought up Black History Month in Connecticut. I don't know how many people realize that Jackie Robinson, who broke the color barrier in Major League Baseball, was a resident of Stamford. And he did a lot for his community. My father actually worked with Jackie Robinson on some work they did to help kids with drug addictions way back in the day. And my dad always spoke of not just what a great baseball player he was and how special he was, but how a great humanitarian he was. So there's just one connection that Connecticut has to significant Black history in the United States.
That's pretty cool. Thanks, Tom, for sharing that.
Thank you, and thank you for what you just talked about. And I also want to add the Islamic Community Center each week, every week, rain, shine, holiday, otherwise, are feeding over 250 families in need from the area. And that includes some members in Fairfield, residents of Fairfield, and Operation Hope obviously does an amazing job as well. So that's just one opportunity, not just for Sundays during Black History Month, but for every Sunday throughout the year. And also, I just wanted to reference The incident that happened at Ward, not from a negative place, although it was despicable and deplorable. And I want to commend Paul Cavanna for his swift response. It was firm. And also for the students who found there was a racist incident, some graffiti in a bathroom at Ward, and there were a few students who came upon it and immediately reported it. And I think it shows sort of the best of what our community can do. Not only the condemning of the act, but also those students who came forward. And I just wanted to focus on the positives and also the victims of that trauma, not the perpetrators of it. So hopefully some good can come out of a dark incident.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, if there's no further new business or information, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone.